Taylor, second. Go ahead, Grayson, have your closing statement.
Okay, so I just want to be very, very clear. At no point did you ever hear me say, this is proof of abiogenesis. This is evidence of abiogenesis. Don't listen to like people trying to tell you I said that. I'm not using it in any of that way. That's a complete straw man of my position entirely. That's not what I was trying to do here at all. Trying to illustrate that these chemical systems can have properties that are relevant to life, right? Not ever saying this is how it happened, not ever saying that this is the evidence that it happened this way. Please do not get it twisted. No one ever said anything like that. No one is trying to tell people that scientists have this figured out. I really am tired of the straw man. Like, I've tried so hard tonight to very clearly and explicitly elucidate my opinions, and it's frustrating when people are straw manning me when I've repeated myself so many times tonight, right? Like, look at the purpose behind why they did an experiment. You cannot write off an experiment because they didn't use prebiotic conditions when the point of the freaking experiment was not to try to demonstrate prebiotic. It's just so asinine. Like, look at why they did the experiment if you're going to critique it. Like, it's just like the very, very basics of critical thinking or analyzing science papers or at all. You think, why are they doing this experiment? That's step one. And I feel like Taylor hasn't done that at all this night, not even one time. So in her conclusion, I just hope that that's what she does. I offered evidence for abiogenesis coming from other means, not the papers we talked about tonight, but just going based on what we see in the universe around us. We know that life originated at a certain point. We know from science our hypothesis has to be naturalistic. We know from the track record that science is much better. It has a better track record than supernatural explanations. There's all the evidence that I need in order to say it's more probable that the origin of life was naturalistic versus supernatural. That's the evidence that I brought tonight. Everything else was just trying to correct misunderstandings about people pushing inaccurate ideas about the science. But
all right,
I don't want to overclaim anything and say that we know how abiogenesis happens. Please do not strawman me to say that. Thank you.
Thank you for that closing statement. And Taylor, uninterrupted, go ahead and have your closing statement. We'll call this a night.
Yeah, so I like how you started out in saying that, you weren't saying that these things were evidence for abiogenesis, and I at least acknowledge you, for making that distinction. I was hoping to get some scientific papers that would be evidence for undirected abiogenesis in the lab. And I think that in order to say that this theory is like, something that should have any sort of value, that we should have those experiments much more from truly prebiotic conditions, to make these assumptions. And I understand that, my opponent has basically said that because everything else has had a naturalistic explanation, that he's, assuming that this will have a naturalistic explanation too. But I think that the evidence shows that the more that we research it, the further away we get from that purely naturalistic explanation for the origin of life. And as we study these things, we see that there's a lot more intricacies and complexities that are hard to overcome, and incompatibilities within the cell that are extremely hard to overcome, which is why I argued that we would have to do it, that I argued that they had to do it in a stepwise synthesis, because they couldn't do it in a one pot shot, because things would basically interact with each other in a negative way. And I understand that's why they have to make these micro environments and things of that nature. But I think that what the field is just lacking is that, pure evidence, experimental empirical evidence that these things can happen, from truly prebiotic conditions. And that's what I would need more of in order to say that, abiogenesis undirected would be a viable theory. So yeah, I'll just end it there.
All right, you guys, that was great. Galatrax, Indio, Jeremy, you guys want to move this down to live stream?
Yep, I could move everyone down to live stream.
Thank you guys for the debate. That was a intense one. 4 hours almost. Nice. we should have like if you guys are down, open discussion in the live stream. If not, no worries. Yeah, thanks for everybody. Thanks for everyone's input.
Yep. Thank you to our debaters for being cordial.
I wish Indio could ask one thing before.
We could.
Yeah, I do have a question
No.
about
Wait,
something
wait.
pretty. I mean,
We
if
already
it's
did
over,
closing statements. Yeah, it's over. You guys came too late.
All right,
That's
so
it?
I'm
We're
gonna
gonna go to
move
the live
everyone
stream.
down
I mean, it's
to
not
live
super
stream
on
Lucy.
topic. It's rated, unrated.
We could do it in the live stream text below.
Word. Okay.
Got you.
All right, so we are wrapping up in
That's
here.
for
I'm gonna move
Grayson.
everybody down.
Of Michael Levin, the evolutionary biologist, that guy.
Yeah, but like only like I've seen a couple YouTube videos of his. I would like about like the whole like like electricity and living things and all of that.
Well, I want to talk about a particular, for lack of a better term, experiment they did.
Okay, well I probably wouldn't be able to weigh in on
I could
any.
describe it to you. I could describe it to you what they did and like what the result was.
Okay,
Because it's very simple. So, do you know what a planaria is? It's like a little tapeworm thing.
like a
And then
flat
you
one.
cut it in. Yeah, you cut it in half, and its head will grow a tail, and its tail will grow a head. Then you'll have two of them.
Yeah.
So what they did was they cut these things in half, and they had a sensor, and they wanted to figure out like how does it know where to grow itself back together, right? How does it know like what to grow back? So what they did was they used the sensor, and what it would do is it would make like a voltage potential. They could detect this voltage potential. So what they did with this information is, so they were like, okay, can we cut a planarium in half and replicate this voltage potential that it would make with the head and see if it'll grow a two-headed planarium? So this is what they did. They cut it in half and they grew to like a two-headed planaria. They grew a freaking two tail. It's just tails, tail and tail. There's no head at all. Three heads, all this. But here's the crazy thing, is that when they cut it in half after they had altered it, right? So now it's like a three-headed planaria. So they cut it into chunks. Those chunks all grow into three-headed planaria. So that would seem to mean that the body morphology, the shape of the planaria, is not related to genetics because it's genetically identical to what it started with. But
It's
now it
not
has a
like,
completely different body shape.
It's not necessarily epigenetically identical though. Like, are you familiar with epigenetics? How like
Yeah.
modifications to the expression of the DNA can like have some major changes.
Then they made it go back though. They can reverse the process and make it go back to like a cut it in half again and make it go back to like a regular planaria.
Okay. Well, you've got me intrigued about this work. I'm gonna look more into it to see like how they rule out any kind of epigenetic modifications. But there's also like there's more, for like lack of a better word, like there's more like algorithmic processing going on in a cell than just at like the DNA level. There's or like the epigenetic level even. There's like there's various forms of modification that, and like behavioral modification that can occur like in the cytoplasm itself based on like different concentrations and different like the presence of different kinds of signaling molecules. So like I don't know what it could be. I think it's an interesting question. I would just need to do more research to give any sort of authoritative stance on it.
Indio.
Oh yeah,
Are you,
yeah. So
are you
well, the point is,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Are you referring to morphogenic resonance by Rupert Sheldrake? Are you
No,
Okay.
not that, not at all.
Okay.
Nothing to do with that. Though I know what you're talking about. I know what that is. I just
Okay.
don't.
I was just curious because like that's also an interesting
So
field.
No,
another thing they did was they made a chimera, right? So like a half frog, half axolotl, and an axolotl is like a salamander, right? So they wanted to see if like the frog, because they mixed the genetic material together, like what's going to happen? Is it going to be an axolotl? Is it going to be a frog? Is this frog going to have regenerative capabilities, right? And like it did some kind of like weird in between thing that the frog would start regenerating body parts, but they would compare it to like how, like, so you have, like, when a frog is, like, when a tadpole becomes a frog, it grows its legs in a certain way, and they take, like, how it develops to become a leg, it's a certain thing. But when they compared it to, like, its regenerative ability, how the leg reforms, it was, like, completely different, right? So it's like a different morphogenesis, for lack of a better term. So the question really is DNA codes for protein, right? Codes proteins. So how do we know that the information for the body morphology of organisms is in the DNA itself and is passed down hereditarily?
Good question.
Because if you change the DNA, you change like the morphology and like the body plan and the layout and stuff. But really quick, I looked for that axolotl frog hybrid paper because that seems really weird to me, and I cannot find it. Is that something that you're able to send a link for?
Yeah, I can send a link to a video he does a presentation on. There might be the papers are in the description. So I don't know.
How do you spell that?
wasn't about-
Axolotl?
This is Michael Levin.
Michael Levin. He was on, like, trying to think. I don't know if he was on Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman or something. That's how I found out about him.
I know that he's been like Michael. I keep seeing his videos like all over my suggested videos. So like I know he gets around and does a lot of interviews and a lot of talks and stuff. I've only seen a couple of them, but I'm really interested in this. So if you could link me that, I would check it out.
Well, his hypothesis is kind of like all the cells of the body are like a neural network in a way. Like the brain is just like a different type of network. But like the body, like how, like cellular differentiation, like that, like the signaling. I'm not saying that he has it figured out. He doesn't even claim to have figured out. He's saying that there's another information component that's not in the DNA. It can't possibly be in the DNA because of these experiments. But I'll DM you a link to the presentation again.
Okay,
You talking about xenobots? His work on xenobots, bro?
Xenobots? No. Talking about GoBots.
Oh, they're called xenobots, where he basically uses frog cells, strips them away of pretty much everything, and you see them build. You can build basically, for example, like a dog pyramid. I remember him talking about this. Like if you have a pyramid, you train the dogs to basically form a pyramid, right? And let's say you knock one of the dogs off of that pyramid. Well, then they're trained to basically go back into that pyramid shape, right? It's the same kind of thing with this frog DNA he was doing. I'm butchering this, obviously, but it was really interesting. Yeah, the xenobots. If you guys haven't seen that, I'll post a video.
Thank you.
Man,
I had a quick question
Michael-
for. Oh, thank you. I had a quick question for Grayson, if that's okay. It was related to my question regarding earlier about the defibrillator.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so are you familiar with the Lazarus effect?
The Lazarus effect.
Yeah, or also known as the Lazarus syndrome. It's a medical phenomenon.
No, I'm
When
googling it
someone-
right now.
Okay. So this kind of relates to abiogenesis. So the origins of life. So we all are aware that everyone will experience death. So sometimes people have come back from death. I'm seeing the longest clinically recorded time someone was revived is 17 hours. And that happened in West Virginia. Now, I've met someone. He died clinically for 42 minutes. I was telling him about someone that I heard of 40 minutes. And the story was that this gentleman died. The doctors were unable to revive him, despite using the defibrillators, trying to use power. Excuse me. But when it all failed, the one son decided to pray to Jesus over his dad's body, and he came back to life. Feel free to check it out.
Do you have like a name or anything? When I Google Lazarus effect, all I'm seeing is a Wikipedia page about like semiconductors used in harsh radiation environments. It's like a semiconductor effect. That's what I'm getting.
Oh, okay. No, yes, I'm referring to the medical phenomenon when somebody is clinically dead, and then they have spontaneous resuscitation.
Okay,
yeah,
so then if it sounds like you were saying that there's like one specific case that's really compelling about that one, do you have like a name or something that I could Google to find like where this is documented?
Yes, I'll tag you in the side chat. And interestingly enough, this is actually based on someone from the Bible. It was a miracle that Jesus used to show everybody the power of.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, I do know about Lazarus in the Bible narrative.
Yeah. So it's based on him. But thank you.
Yeah.
I'll post you some more info. And thanks for taking my question.
I seem to remember maybe in 2022 or something, didn't they reanimate a pig?
Oh wow.
Does anybody remember that?
Yeah, probably.
Scientists reanimate dead cells in pigs. 2022. Yep. Let me see what more details. Because I know that. Let's see. Let me see how many hours. Let me see how many hours it was dead.
While you're checking that out, I didn't actually get a chance to ask this question because, I didn't want to interrupt. But what do you think about certain things that have come up in the abiogenesis talk, like Eigen's paradox, for example?
So there are like a lot of like different paradoxes that people come up with in terms of like abiogenesis research. I know that Benner tried to compile like a list of different ones, like the asphalt paradox or I don't know.
Paradox.
Yeah, there are tons of things that like are labeled as paradoxes or whatever, which are just like difficult problems to wrap your head around, right? And I like the way that Benner concludes his list of the different paradoxes, where basically he says, whatever is the eventual answer for a mechanism of abiogenesis, one thing that we know about it is that it's going to have to resolve these paradoxes. And and he points to previous times where we've had paradoxes in science, which turned out to basically be like a guiding like a guiding light to where the next discovery is going to be made, right? Like the resolution of paradoxes is how we make progress in science. So like there was the UV catastrophe paradox that led to quantum mechanics. There was like the paradox, and I know this is not a very good place to bring this up, but like there were the paradoxes at the end of the 19th century over like the ether and how light can move through ether, and that paradox was resolved by relativity. And so like oftentimes like the way that these paradoxes are resolved in the history of science is by showing that the paradox itself relies on some unjustified assumption that the true answer ends up showing why that assumption is not valid. That's what typically happens in the history of science. So in this case, whatever the answer for abiogenesis is one day would necessarily have to resolve these paradoxes by showing why the assumptions that they rely on are not founded.
So check this out in chat.
Can I say something real quick, Visa?
Yeah.
I
right
find it that the two examples you gave both have paradoxes in them. The paradox was resolved with a theory that has another paradox. So that's hilarious.
Yeah, well, we don't have to go into relativity. I agree with you, Indio, but just wanted to point you to this since you're looking at information, Grayson. There's this little playlist I just tagged you in the live chat. I highly recommend you watch it. It's a really nice playlist. Little good animations. It's basically debunking chemical evolution, the origin of abiogenesis. And it's like a short 6-part series, about 10 minutes each video. And I think it's excellent. I think it's an excellent little series.
I'm not seeing it. Where did you put it?
Here, I'll reply to it and tag you again.
Oh, in the live stream text?
Yeah. I'll do it again.
So they're having to invoke these like really amazing complex scenarios in order to solve for these paradoxes, like these different basically reactants that would have had to be there, right? Like the iron sulfur minerals for amino acid synthesis. They need borate minerals, pyrite. We need montrolite clay for these different reactions to happen. And then now they're invoking like UV radiation for RNA synthesis and these wet dry cycles that have to be invoked in like the pore of some rock and have these like microenvironments in the pore of some hydrothermal vent. So it's like the complexity and the need for these things are still there. Like the cell, like the basic functions are going to need to have complex scenarios. Now, whether you're having those complex scenarios be revolved within the cell is one thing, and that's how our cell deals with them, but they're having to put all these complex scenarios in the environment. And so it just like really makes for a funny picture at the end of the day about all these different scenarios and conditions the environment would have to be accounting for. Like they would admit this themselves, like, that there's not even one cohesive explanation as to where it could have happened, because like Sutherland and papers like that are invoking this like small tidal pool, whereas for the amino acid synthesis and protein synthesis, they're invoking these hydrothermal vent conditions, but they're incompatible. Like protein synthesis, in some of the experiments that they've shown prebiotically, you need much higher temperatures than what the RNA synthesis would need. And the water requirements are different. So it's really funny to see all these different things. And then some say, okay, well, we can't have UV light, so it's going to have to be, the hydrothermal vents might be more plausible because the UV light would, break things down over time.
So
However, in the, with forming the RNA bonds, they were invoking UV light. So
right, like
it's a bunch of issues with this whole
A
scenario.
bunch of
Well,
special pleading and appeal to possibility.
I tried
Yeah.
to make this point during the debate, but it's like this is literally the case in every single branch of science where there's not a consensus theory and there's only competing hypotheses for explanation. You could literally say that for any area of science where that is the case. Anyone.
Give me an
That's
example.
not the case. No.
Quantum
Correct.
gravity. Quantum gravity is such
your
an example. Quantum gravity is a great example because currently there's no consensus for quantum gravity. There's only a series of competing hypotheses, and those hypotheses are mutually exclusive and contradictory. It's exactly the scenario that you're proposing.
This is theoretical.
Yeah, it's
But
all
we know that life is here, so somehow it had to happen. And then we
Yeah.
we know what's required for life and what's required to make those, biopolymers that are required
Yeah,
for
we
life.
know-
And then we can see that they can
Yeah.
have to form in different conditions.
Taylor,
So
it's the
not like
same for
some
quantum
theoretical
gravity.
concept of gravity.
No.
No, it's the same for quantum gravity. We know it's a thing. We just don't know how it works.
How?
How do you know it's a thing though if you don't know how it works?
Also, if
Because
quantum
we
gravity
can
is a
see-
theory and abiogen is not a theory, then it's not. That's not
Quantum
analogous.
gravity is not a theory. Abiogenesis is not a theory. We don't have a theory for either one of them. We only have a series of competing hypotheses that are contradicting each other. It's the same for
You
both.
have no
It's the same-
hypothesis for your abiogenesis, man. Your null hypothesis is life did not occur. You don't know what a null hypothesis is.
And there's not a consistent hypothesis. That's the thing.
Yeah,
Again,
it's
there's
all
no
over the place.
consistent hypothesis for quantum gravity. You've got loop quantum gravity, which is totally different than energetic causal set theory, which is totally different than string theory. Like all of these are contradictory. They don't even have the same number of dimensions.
Seems concrete. But you don't have any falsification for abiogenesis. It's unfalsifiable. Your position is
You think it's
unfalsifiable.
unfalsifiable? Of course Of course it is.
You just candidly admit that?
Yeah, no, I admit freely that abiogenesis is falsifiable.
That's what I'm saying. Like the debate
You
ended
said
so
it's
quick.
unfalsifiable. You just candidly said that.
No, I didn't. I said it is falsifiable, dumbass. Listen.
Can you tell
Hey,
us? Can you
you
tell us?
said
Hold on, let me ask you a
unfalsifiable.
question.
Also, you don't need to name call, man.
Look, okay, I
Well,
am
can
sorry. I think that everybody else in this server, I don't have a problem with, but for some reason, this Galatrax guy just really pisses me off. I don't know why, but it's just this guy in particular sets me off. I'm sorry.
Oh, well,
maybe
it's because I don't
consistency
let
fallacy.
you do your cheap tactics and ad nauseum bulldozing.
Okay,
Hey, you know what? It might be
Can I
more
ask a question
might be
really
more
quick,
productive
dude? We can
to just
end the meta, dude. Like fucking.
yeah, please.
It's, okay, so
Yeah, I don't know why he's
if
whining
you're saying
about
it is
it.
falsifiable, so can you give us an example of an experiment that would have some result that would falsify abiogenesis?
Yeah, certainly. Like if we basically if we saw like no progression of life in the fossil record, but instead we saw that life basically was always at the same level it is now from the various earliest rock layers, I think that we would have like pretty substantial evidence against like any like naturalistic theory of abiogenesis happening, because like the time frames involved would preclude it as being a possibility.
But that's
I mean,
not
the argument's already been made that the time planes involved they preclude the possibility, such as
Yes,
random
but-
proteins forming by chance and all that shit, right?
Yes, the only issue is that those arguments are like fallacious because they rely on faulty assumptions.
So how could we prove or disprove abiogenesis in particular, not looking at fossil records and evolution? Like, how could we disprove it?
Well, why do you not like the answer I just gave you that would disprove it? I just gave you an answer and you said, well, other than the
Well,
answer you just
well,
gave,
that
can you
wasn't
give a
a.
second one?
No, that's
No,
looking at
well,
the.
I don't. I also don't think the answer was sufficient. Because you talk about evolution, not abiogenesis. So
No,
I distinguish the two
okay,
things,
wait.
right? So
Does
evolution could be false and abiogenesis could be true, right? So like they're like different ideas.
No, look, what I'm trying to express, right, is my idea didn't have anything to do with evolution, okay? I don't know why you guys think it did. Maybe I just wasn't
Because you
explaining
said it.
myself.
You said the word.
Maybe I just was not explaining myself well. Let me try again, right? My
You said
point.
fossil record.
Yeah, man, that's a different word than evolution. Try to
We're
keep
trying
up.
to get from before the fossil record to there even being a fossil record.
Yeah, okay, if I'm not allowed to explain myself, then like I'm not going to be able to explain myself, right? So, what I'm trying to say is if the fossil record showed us that like right at the very earliest layers, we have complex multicellular life forms just like today, then I would say there is not enough time for abiogenesis to have occurred in a physically plausible way. That is why that evidence would rule out the possibility of abiogenesis for me. That is exactly what I was asked for, which was evidence that would falsify abiogenesis. I provided it.
Okay. I wasn't asking like what you subjectively think, how you would feel about it. Because you could just be lucky, right? And like, yes, you don't think there's enough time, but maybe we just got lucky and there wasn't enough time. So that's like maybe you think there wasn't enough time, but that I'm asking for like an experiment. So like experiments have been done. You and Tara have been talking about all these experiments that have been done to try and simulate processes that would lead to abiogenesis. Is there any experiment that can be done that would falsify abiogenesis being possible? Because if we're sitting here doing chemical experiments, like, shouldn't we be trying to prove it's not possible?
I don't know how you would construct an experiment, like an experiment that you could do in your lab to show that abiogenesis is impossible. I mean, maybe I'm just not creative enough, but I don't know how you would show that in a lab.
Isn't there a factor of irreducible complexity, like the
No.
ATP synthase? Like, doesn't that require 6 ATP synthase to make one of them?
Irreducible,
Yeah, you need
irreducible,
6 ATP to make 1 ATP.
irreducible complexity is not a factor at all because we have seen irreducible complex systems evolve. Therefore, irreducible complexity is not relevant to whether or not something could have arisen
From
naturally.
living systems. We've seen it evolve from living systems and from intervention.
That is totally irrelevant.
But it is true. Like, so we're not
Okay.
saying that things can form irreducibly complex from non-living systems. That's the claim.
Isn't that, I mean, that's really the claim, right? The idea that non-life can spawn life, right? Rocks to snakes.
Yeah.
No, the claim is that irreducibly complex systems could not have arisen naturally. That is the claim. That is the claim that is debunked by showing natural systems where irreducibly complex dynamics arise naturally. That's
from already living systems, though, so it's irrelevant.
So that experiment,
it's not irrelevant because it demonstrates.
Wait. The experiment you're referencing, though, Grayson, right? The experiment you're referencing, they already use something alive, correct?
No, they did not.
Yes, they used an RNA polymerase from a living cell.
Self-replicating RNA is not a living thing, but if you want to say that it's from a living thing, then I would agree. But the issue is that what this experiment is showing, what is designed to show, is that in principle, irreducible complexity does not require a designer. That's what it shows in principle, and that is what it shows. It's not designed to show that irreducible complex systems arise from non-living things. That is not the point, Taylor. Please understand.
We can refine our RNA to irreducible.
Don't you understand that the RNA spontaneous degenerate, it had a precursor, right?
I can't hear anything.
From the RNA itself.
People are talking right now.
Yeah, so the RNA itself came from something that is also subject to this irreducible complexity thing, right? So you got something, you say, hey, we're going to prove that there's no irreducible complexity, that it can come from something that is not irreducibly complex. but you're taking that from something that is according to us, is irreducibly complex,
Yeah.
taking it out of it and then saying, hey, we can take that thing and then make that thing into that other thing. Like,
right, because that's not the
that's
point.
like circular logic.
You're
But that's
all
circular.
missing the point. You're all missing the point. The point is not to show that irreducible complexity can come from non-living things or things that are not irreducible complex. Okay? Please understand. That is not the point. That's not the point I'm trying to use it with. I'm trying to be so freaking clear about the point I'm using right here, and none of you seem to be getting it. Let me slow down. The point is that an irreducibly complex system can arise naturally without it being designed. That's the point. That's what the experiment shows, and it doesn't require. It does not require that you start from non-living things to show that point.
Okay, so
It would need to require that if you can claim that it came from all non-living systems, though.
What you said was an irreducibly complex system can come from naturalistic processes, but that naturalistic process you're referring to is from an irreducibly complex system.
Which is self-replicating RNA.
Do you understand
right?
why that
It's
doesn't
circular,
matter?
dude.
I feel
It's
like
circular.
but no, it's a
Because
non-sequitur.
are you not?
Taylor,
It's
you're
circular
highlighting.
logic. Don't you
Look,
not
no, it's not
understand that?
circular. Look, it's not circular, and let me explain why. The rise of the irreducibly complex system, right? That system did not exist prior. So yes, you can say that the RNA itself is irreducibly complex with the RNA polymerase. That's besides the point entirely, because the only point is not that it has to come from something that's not irreducibly complex or something that's not living or whatever. The point is that this irreducibly complex system did arise. It did not previously exist. It arose from something that was irreducibly complex. Sure, I get that. I hear you on that. I acknowledge that point. But it did arise without anyone designing it. Nobody designed that 5-component system that is irreducibly complex. That system was not present in the original. That system was not designed. It arose naturally, and it is irreducibly complex. Therefore, the point is that you cannot use irreducible complexity as an argument to say that something had a designer. That is the point.
Let me frame it right like this, real quick, Grayson. Is self-replicating RNA polymerase an irreducibly complex system?
Sure.
Okay. The experiment you're referring to used that, correct?
Yes.
So you can't say that an irreducibly complex system formed from a non-irreducibly complex system when you're actually using the self-replicating RNA polymerase, right? So that's not
and
a
that is why I never claimed that.
Well,
what I claimed, if you go back, if you go back and listen, I chose my words very carefully so that I did not say that. And I could not be strawmanned to having said that. I tried very intentionally to not say that. I said that an irreducibly complex system came from a system that was not irreducibly complex in the same way. That's what I was saying.
But it's not even like, I just want to make a point on irreducible complexity. It's not even like that one protein or one component can be removed and it still functions. Like, yeah, that could be an argument against it. But the thing is that, like, it's the systems present that rely on one another that make it that irreducible complexity. Just like, just like Greenwald was talking about how, he thinks that RNA and proteins formed simultaneously. They would need to both be there. So wouldn't he be invoking some type of irreducible complexity if he's saying that both of them need to be there?
Taylor, that is exactly what was observed in the experiment. Was those systems arising together at the same time and becoming irreducibly complex? That is what the experiment showed. Exactly what you just said.
Yeah, so they can simultaneously coexist, right? But side point, that wouldn't mean that they can simultaneously form from inorganic molecules, but that's besides the point. But still, that is showing this irreducible complexity needed at the very start of life to say they both need to be present.
What it is showing is that the 5-unit irreducibly complex system, which did not exist at the start of the experiment, that irreducibly complex system arose without any designer. Nobody designed that system. It wasn't like that system was like the blueprints for it were in place when the experiment started. That nobody said there's going to be 5 units and this is how they're going to work, and if you take this unit out, it doesn't work. That system just arose spontaneously without anyone directing it or a designer.
That's the point.
They actually did direct it because they literally introduced these compounds and then they were surprised when they reacted with one another. That's not that impressive.
No. That's not true. That is not true.
Did they not in the experiment you're referencing already put nucleobases and these amyloids or nucleotides?
No, you're talking about
Nucleobases and the proteins?
No,
I got an idea. I got an idea.
You're talking about a different experiment.
Grayson, go ahead and post that. Sorry, my mouth is full. Go ahead and post
Let
that
me do
paper.
Let me do that.
Yeah, I would like to see this paper so we can all discuss it appropriately.
Yeah, because I did not send this paper to Taylor before, so I don't think she
Glad
has.
I found it because I know you would because you did end up bringing it up, so I'm glad I read it beforehand.
I don't know if you read this before, Taylor.
Let's post it in live stream text.
Yeah. I'm trying to find it right now. I don't have it like pulled up or anything.
Awesome.
Real quick, also, there was something I think I heard before I was talking to Indio and they got timed out listening on a different Discord channel. But I thought you said something about the irreducible complexity being compared to the complexity of a black hole, or did I hear that wrong?
No, I was talking about how the surface of black holes are some of the most complex things in the universe.
But they're not relying on integrated systems. When I talk about irreducible complexity, I mainly am referring to integrated systems and circuits within the cell.
Okay. I was just talking about complexity just in terms of, what was typically meant as complex, which is like the number of
anything
different
can
parts.
be complex. A rock can be complex, so that's
We're just a bunch
We're
of
all just
complicated
complicated
rocks.
rocks.
I beat you to it.
essentially, right?
So,
Big
Grayson, what do you think of the objections of abiogenesis by James Tour?
Oh, did you see that James Tour made a video about me last night?
He went to
Oh,
the
I saw
James
the video.
Tour
I didn't know
Professor
you
Dave
were in
debate.
it. I didn't know you were in
Didn't you
it.
go to the James Tour Professor Dave debate?
Yeah, I was there at that debate. I talked with Dr. Tour afterwards, and then if you look at James Tour's newest video, I'm in the thumbnail. My face is blurred out or whatever, like I'm America's #1 public enemy, but I'm in the thumbnail, and he was reacting to my video. So,
well, I watched that part 1, right? So it's titled Amyloid Worlds something or other, right?
Yeah, I will be
He's talking about a
making
bunch of people. I don't think he singled you out.
What's that?
I don't think he singled you out. He talked about a couple people.
Oh no, he did. If you finish the video, I'm in the second half. I'm in the video. They're responding to me saying things, and they're basically like, I will be making a response video because I think that they make several mistakes. And I think that the way that they the way that they represent the literature, I feel like was kind of dishonest, where they say, oh, well, the issue with this paper is this, but then they ignore the other papers that don't do that. So it's like, I feel like they were picking and choosing only to address 4 papers when there's dozens and dozens of papers, and their problems were addressed in the papers that they didn't bring up.
Dude, but then how long would the video be?
I know it was already 2 hours, but the issue is if you're gonna say something they have to use these non-prebiotically relevant activating groups, and then you show a paper where they do that, but then you don't show the paper where they use prebiotically relevant ones. That feels dishonest.
Well, that's why they need to do it all at once.
I can't speak for them. There is a part 2. Maybe they go over that, right? So,
yeah.
Like I said, there's there's a 2 hours on that. Talk about chemistry for 2 hours, dude. It's kind of a dry subject. I hate to tell you.
I know, yeah.
Probably 2 people going to watch that video anyway, and I'm one of the 2.
Yeah, well, I think that right now might be the most viewed video on YouTube about amyloid, so.
Probably, I wouldn't doubt it. And I don't even like chemistry and don't even know a lot about chemistry. I just find this topic interesting because it's
it comes from a philosophical bias.
What's that?
I think this whole topic comes from a philosophical bias, right? It's an atheistic point of view.
Yeah, some people are just terrified of God.
I would say that there's definitely I would say that there's definitely a philosophical bias to science because science is naturalistic. So of course that's a bias. If you're going to do science, because it's abiogenesis is a theory of science. It needs to be naturalistic. But if you're gonna like open up the discussion to talk about more things than just science, then we could have had a discussion about like creation versus naturalism or something like that.
What about the fine tuning problem? I find fascinating because
Yeah.
the answer to fine tuning in the scientific community, instead of it just being a supernatural, creator, a god, they have resorted to the multiverse theory, which is insane.
I disagree with your characterization that like the multiverse is a like answer to fine tuning. Like, I mean, like
I mean,
I think the
that's by
multiverse.
the top astrophysicist, though.
Well,
I mean,
hold on. Let me explain what I mean. I was in the middle of explaining. I was
sorry,
saying
sorry.
that we didn't come up with the multiverse to be an answer to fine tuning. Like, I understand, like, oftentimes people will bring it up as an answer to fine tuning, but like, the multiverse as an idea would have been like, even if we never thought about this concept of fine tuning or anything, we still would have come up with the multiverse. Like, it's a very simple, straightforward idea of like, well, if the universe started once, is there anything preventing it from doing it again? And then just from that, the idea of the multiverse follows pretty straightforwardly. Like you don't need any fine tuning.
So the thing about the fine tuning and the multiverse is like if you were to try to explain like the like intelligent life forming, because there's so many different multiverses, eventually one of them is going to have like this intelligent life form. Like you would have to acknowledge that there's new information being continuously added and some type of intervention that would have to happen for life to form in any of the universes. You need new information. So if they're going to say, oh well, found one of these universes is going to have life, right? But no, that's not necessarily how it works, because you constantly need new information as like the evolutionary process is happening, and a bunch of constants would have to change. There would have to be some intervention there. It wouldn't be
So,
sufficient to just explain the complexity in the universe.
yeah, so I would agree with you in that there needs to be some sort of analogous mechanism to mutation, right? Because with evolution, the new information comes from mutations. That's what introduces it. So then you need some sort of analogous mechanism of mutation to introduce this new information every time a multiverse creates a next generation of universes. There needs to be some sort of something that could explain how they could mutate and change the properties of them a little bit. So like I agree with you on that point, Taylor, that nobody like I haven't
Seems
seen anybody proposing a
unfalsifiable, bro.
mechanism. I haven't seen anybody proposing a mechanism for that. But I also don't usually myself use the multiverse as an answer to like personally, if you ask my opinion on fine tuning, I do not think that there is fine tuning. I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that.
That's crazy.
That's
Oh,
pretty
Gregor,
nuts,
you're
actually.
The scientists even acknowledge the fine tuning of the laws of nature.
So I'll explain what I mean by that is that for all these scientists that are talking about like the fine tuning, like Luke Barnes is one of the physicists. I've read his papers on it. Basically, for everyone to make that argument, you first have to assume what the possible range of values for the different constants is, and I don't think that there's enough information to justify that assumption. So I don't think that there's enough information for us to say that the universe is fine tuned.
But for any multiverse, if for any universe to be able to sustain, you need these laws of nature to be perfect, which can imply something our minds to hold these laws of nature. So, I mean,
So,
and it doesn't solve the problem of creation. Like, where did the first universe get created at?
so
Because you're just going to call it infinite regression.
this is what I'm saying is that you have to assume that these laws could be different, or you have to assume that these constants could have different values than they do. And I just don't know of a reason why I should make that assumption. Like, why should I assume that they could be different? Like this, I'm honestly asking. That's not a rhetorical question. Does anybody have a good reason for why I should assume that any of these constants of nature could be different values than they are?
Well, if
think
you're
that's not the
implying a
issue.
multiverse where one of them had one constant that just happened to be the right constants to, be able to sustain the universe and life,
So
then, those
when I
other
look at
multiverses, I'm not sure if you'd say that they have different constants or not, but,
no,
you know.
I don't know because I don't think there's any. We don't have enough information to even know to speculate. But my point is like when we look at other previous examples of constants which used to be thought of as fundamental constants of nature that just have the value that they happen to have, like Fermi's constant, we then discovered later on when we learned more fundamental physics, oh, that's why Fermi's constant has that value. Then we found out why, and it had to be that value. The possible range of values was like none. It had to be that value, and we knew specific reasons why only later. So it's like
That's not the.
if we have a track record of that in the past, then like why should I make the assumption that like these other
It had to have
concepts?
that value, so it happened to have it. So then we're just gonna say it's by some happenstance that it had it.
That's actually the exact
It's
opposite of what I just said, Taylor. Literally the exact opposite. Like where's your listening comprehension here?
Well, I
the
think
issue is
what you're getting
not
at
are the
maybe.
laws of physics necessary. That's not the issue. The issue is what is the necessary precondition for the uniformity of nature. You don't have that in your worldview, so you don't have any good reason to believe that anything whatsoever is reliable.
So I can answer that directly in that, and I mentioned this in the debate, like it's currently unknown what space-time is composed of fundamentally. So like we know that there's space that separates
That's not even the
things.
issue either.
No, that is the issue. I'm trying to explain it, but just let me
That's
get there real
not the
quick.
issue.
Hey, wait. Hey, Gregory, don't let him finish first. And also, Indio was trying to get in. So after
His
he,
answer doesn't even address my
no,
question.
Gregory,
Gregory,
just come
don't
on.
interrupt, bro. It's
I
gonna
know
be
you
radio
think
chaos. Yeah.
if you just let me finish the thought, I promise it will make sense to answer your question. Just you don't know where I'm going with this. Please let me explain. I'm saying that there are currently good reasons that physicists are thinking that space is not truly fundamental and is actually created from some more fundamental underlying reality that doesn't have space. So, if that's the case, lots of prominent physicists are saying, like, they're pursuing theories about that. If that is the case, then the reason why uniformitarianism is the way it is and why things are the same at different points in the universe is because the fundamental physics is one without space. That explains it. So yes, I am answering your question. You just had to let me finish talking there.
No, it does not. I'm going to explain to you why it doesn't. I'm not talking to you about uniformitarianism. Uniformitarianism is the notion that the behavior of the material entities has never changed. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking to you about the regular, normal, law-like function of material entities. I'm not talking to you about the alleged notion of the unchanging normal function of material entities, just the normalcy of their function properties.
Right.
You didn't account for what makes that manifest. You just mentioned their conjecture about an issue I didn't ask you about.
It is the same thing because what you're talking about with like how they normally behave is saying that they are uniform in space and time. That's what you're talking about. That's why what I just explained to you why they're uniform in space and time. If it is like
I just told you what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know, and you think we're talking about two different things, but in reality we are not.
Okay, but you're just dictating to me what I just told to you instead of just acknowledging that I did say to you. You are not talking about the issue that I just articulated to you. Uniformitarianism is not what I'm talking about. There's a difference between the uniformity of nature and uniformitarianism. If we're consistent with the common and classical usage of these terms, uniformitarianism is the notion that the behavior of material entities has never changed. I'm not talking about that.
Me neither, dude.
I'm talking about the normalcy of their function, allowing for the possibility and/or the occurrence of paranormal behavior of material entities. That's not what I'm talking about. Neither did your answer address actually establishing what instantiates or manifests the uniformity of nature. So you don't have a regulator or normalizer for the regular normal functions of material entities, unless you actually likely say your answer that addresses that.
Okay, Gregory, I'm talking about the uniformity of nature, the normalcy of uniform causal relations, the reliability of them, or whatever. I'm talking about what you're talking about. My answer is the same. That is due to the fact that space is not fundamental. If we listen to these cutting edge physicists, which I like their theory, I mean, that's just, I'm not saying it's true, but that is a naturalistic explanation for what you're talking about. If the fundamental reality does not include space in it, then it would explain the creation of space, like the expression of this reality through spatial dimensions, is uniformly expressed. That would explain what you're bringing up. If it has to do with the actual creation of space from more fundamental underlying physics.
Okay, you just wait, and Indio, were you going to get into something too?
Oh yeah, that's right. Indio. Yeah, Indio didn't want to say something. I can't remember now.
Yeah, Indio. Also, the black hole guy that you were referencing earlier about the black holes. Who was that again?
Wait.
Oh, Stephen Crothers.
Black hole guy?
No, he
Stephen
has
Crothers.
a guy named Stephen Crothers. Pretty much destroyed
Crothers.
the idea that black holes existed.
I think Alan actually just had a presentation about this, about how Crothers says that incorporating a black hole destroys, like they have to change their calculations in the FLRW tensor. Like if you incorporate a black hole and then it takes away the uniformness and the homogeneous aspects of the universe. Like if you incorporate one black hole.
So here's something really interesting is that there are some observations that are indicating that the current expansion rate of the universe correlates with the amount of black hole production. Like the more black holes are produced, the faster the universe starts accelerating.
Well, they have to incorporate it because it ruins their tensor that they're using.
Well, I'm just
the
saying
answer that you said to me earlier to my question is not a precondition. It's just a negation. A negation saying it's not this is not a thing in itself, which the uniformity of nature is contingent upon, unless you want to reify a negation premise.
Well, I'm saying
the
that
answer is categorically erroneous.
Well, I'm saying that if like the fundamental reality is one that does not have space, and that the creation of space involves it being uniformly expressed in that mechanism of space's creation, then that's a naturalistic explanation that would provide the preconditions for the uniformity of nature.
You're not specifying anything. You're just saying it's not this, and it may be something unspecified. You're not saying what it is.
Like, are you talking about like the more fundamental spaceless reality? That's not on. What are you talking about?
Whatever your metaphysic is, because if it's not the God that sustains the uniformity of nature by his divine powerful word, then what is?
Like, what are you talking about? Like, in terms of, like, what
What's
it is?
the causal mechanism for the uniformity of nature? I can talk,
That's a good way to
Right, okay.
ask
So
it.
the mechanism I was saying, at least a possible mechanism, is whatever mechanism is creating space. I don't know what that is because nobody knows what that is. I'm just saying, like, if what physicists are saying is true, and that there is some mechanism that's creating space from a fundamentally spaceless reality, then that mechanism would potentially be an explanation for why it's uniform. But I don't know what that mechanism is. I'm just giving
Okay, so you're appealing to a question mark.
Gregory, I got the answer, dude. It's an emergent property, so we'll just say that.
So you're right. I'm appealing to something that is like not known, but I was giving you a possibility. Like, if you were like really trying to ask me like, do I know this? I would say no. Of course I don't know the answer to your question. I'm just saying this is a
possibility, bro.
I'm putting it out as a possibility. I think. Like,
okay, so with that being said, what you said to us is again, I don't know, question mark, unspecified entity. At best, your answer is ambiguous, which is an obvious concession to ignorance. So you don't know that nature is actually uniform. So you can't rely on anything.
Well, okay. Yeah, I was just trying to put forward possible. If you were just genuinely trying to like get at, do I know? Wait, hold on. If you were just trying to get at like, do I know or do I not know? Then of course I would answer you, I don't know what like preconditions or guarantees the uniformity of nature. Like, I thought you were just asking me, like, I thought you were saying that there's no possibility that anything naturalistic could do that. So I was just spitballing.
That's the problem. That's your problem in your worldview. You don't have a justification to believe nature is uniform. So you don't have any justification to rely upon anything, to appeal to anything, to make a case about anything.
Can I give you my
as far as you know, this is all illusory.
Can I give you my justification?
Okay, how do you know that the uniformity of nature is indeed that?
I don't know, but that doesn't matter because
that's the problem. That is a problem.
You gotta let him finish, bro.
But he just keeps obfuscating the issue.
I'm trying to answer.
Just give us the justification, dude. Let's hear this and then respond.
Yeah. I'm trying to answer. Like, I'm saying, I don't know. Okay, I don't know things for like an absolute certainty in that way. But like, my past experience makes it seem pretty damn reliable that the sun's gonna rise tomorrow morning. You know, it's literally. I'm not saying I know that the sun will rise tomorrow morning. I'm just saying, like, I think it's more probable based on my past experience that it's like good enough for me to function on a day-to-day. I don't need absolute knowledge of everything.
Yeah, but what's your justification?
Again, you've told us that you don't know.
Yes.
You can't just excuse yourself of this glaring issue in your worldview arbitrarily. If you can just arbitrarily declare by fiat, this is not a problem for your worldview, then anyone else can do the same, but you won't afford anyone else to do the same, including and especially the Christian. So if they don't have the right to do that, you don't have the right to do that either. You have a glaring discrepancy in your worldview, which means you can't rely upon anything.
So, okay, I think I'm just being epistemically humble. I don't see this as a glaring issue with my worldview. Maybe you guys could explain to me why it would be some kind of issue. But personally, like...
Because the entire endeavor of the naturalistic worldview is based on the uniformity of nature, and if you have no justification for it, then it's built on a house of sand. That's what he's saying. And you're just kicking the can down the road the same way someone says, well, God did it, the God of the gaps argument. It's the same thing. That's what he's trying to tell.
The justification is that we never see an exception. Every single time we look at it, it's uniform. Like, if we looked up and we saw exceptions, then there we go. It's just an empirical basis. But the thing is, like, if I flip a coin 6 billion times and it's heads every single time, then that's a good enough justification to bet all my money that it's going to land on heads next time.
That's intelligent design, bro.
First of all, that's not true at all. Because when we see, when we see something that isn't uniform, we try to come up with another naturalistic explanation for that. So it's like, turtles all the way down, as they say. The thing is, you never got the foundational, that it's built on something. The whole worldview of science is built upon this uniformitary normalcy of nature, the regularity of nature over time, right? So
because that's what's always observed.
No justification. But when it's not, you say that's also something of nature, right? So when we see an anomaly, right? something like I can't think of an example.
Yeah, like I
Anomalous
can't think
total
of any
internal
example.
fucking reflection, right? So it's like an anomalous. It only happens in certain situations of physics, right? Of reflection inside of certain materials. So it's an anomaly. Nobody had ever seen it before they ever saw it, and then we come up with another naturalistic explanation for that, and then we say, "Oh, nature's uniform," because we came up with another explanation. Nature's not uniform like that. Like it's like some things are uniform, and then we take data on them, and then we make a model to frickin' fit the data. But not things aren't uniform like that, right? So I
What?
don't know.
Even
You're
if it
getting like I
was
don't know why you're
uniform like
understanding
that,
is that you're like
No,
jumping.
I don't. Okay,
You
wait,
have the
wait.
same. You have hold on. I'll say two more sentences. Your foundation is the same faith-based foundation as someone as a deist.
Look, I don't know what you're talking about, but when I look around, I see uniformity to nature. I think that Gregory does. I think
Until you don't.
most people agree in the uniformity of nature. I especially as it's weird as a theist for you to say that nature is not uniform, but whatever. Like, I think that like the thing is it's our continuous and reliable observations that are good enough for most people to live their lives. Like for me, I don't need absolute knowledge of anything to live my life. I just need to be certain enough to
it's a
function, and I'm certain
digression to
enough to function.
pragmatics.
I'm certain
That's a
enough that the sun's
digression.
gonna ride. It's good enough. It's reliable enough.
That's just
Can I?
a digression distracting to the self-report or description of human behavior. You're not accounting for the issue. You're just distracting attention away from the issue. The issue is you don't know that the uniformity of nature is indeed that. That's a
So
glaring
what?
problem. If
Why
you
is it a
don't
problem?
know that the uniformity of nature is indeed manifest,
So what?
then you cannot rely upon anything. You don't know anything caused anything.
Yeah, I
You don't
disagree
know
with that, man.
any of your empirical sensations, and your interpretations thereof are reliable, and that your interpretations thereof are accurate. You
Yeah,
have destroyed the possibility of knowledge.
sure, fine, man. That's fine. I don't need to know anything. It's fine. I can be pretty sure and pretty confident that it's gonna be accurate enough to be reliable. That's fine. You don't need absolute knowledge of anything to like live a
You're
day-to-day
just
life.
waving your hand like you
I don't
don't
think it's an issue. I
know.
really
That's the
don't.
problem.
I really don't think that what you're describing is an actual problem. It seems like
Of
I'm
course
making
you
up
don't,
super
but we're not
problem.
going to conclude on that. We're not going to conclude on your hand wave. Your problem
Okay,
is very
hold on.
glaring. It's a
Can somebody
classic
explain
issue
to me
in
why
history
it's the issue?
philosophy.
Okay,
Okay,
let
I just told you why. I'm going to tell you
Yeah, guys,
again.
we're gonna need to go. We're gonna need to go one at a time.
here,
So
let me.
Yeah,
any
my-
I think you made your point,
go ahead.
Gregory.
We're
I
gonna
think
need
you
to go
made
one
your
at a time.
I
I'll
can
just
speak
make.
right now.
Yeah, let Busico explain because Gregory, I heard your explanation. You said it's because you think that if I don't know things for certain, then I can't rely on anything. But it's literally fine to just assume that my senses are reliable enough to function, and if they're not, then there's obviously going to be some mismatch that's going to cause a problem, and I'll have to readjust my model. But so
That's
far,
not what he's.
You've
so
missed the
good.
point. You've missed the second half. It's not
You
just that you have an
you can't
epistemic
Let's
account
issue.
for
let Indio
knowledge.
try here.
What he's
It's,
telling
it's,
you,
Indio,
you
go
can't
ahead.
account
I'm
for
trying to finish
like
the other half that he missed. It's not just the epistemic issue. You don't have what is needed for the uniformity of nature to be manifest. So given that place is effectively blank, empty, then you couldn't have the uniformity of nature. There wouldn't be the evident manifest uniformity of nature so that anything can be what they are consistently functioning, so that you could be here as you are for the duration that you have, so that we can have this conversation that you can know anything. That's the problem.
Okay,
It destroys the reality
so
of the thing, including you.
so I understand that you started off by saying it's not an epistemic issue, but like, how is it not? Just because I
I
don't
said
know.
not
Wait,
only.
hold on.
I
I let you
said
speak.
not
I let you speak. Let me
only.
finish my question. Let me finish my goddamn question here, uninterrupted. Thank you. I'm just asking you. Just because I'm unaware of whatever mechanism it is that is responsible for the uniformity of nature, just because I'm unaware of that, why does that mean that I cannot observe that in the world around me?
You're not listening. I'm speaking very clearly. If you don't have the necessary precondition for the uniformity of nature, then there would be no uniformity of nature.
That
If
does
there
not follow.
is no uniformity, it does follow. The uniformity of nature is a contingent state of affairs. It's a contingent set of
Well,
properties. And you don't have what is necessary for that
let me
contingent
try
set
to
of properties
translate.
to be real.
Hey,
And so if you don't have it,
Gregory,
can I just finish then?
Gregory, let Indio translate. Let me try to translate.
Okay,
It's
why
not
do you
just
have to
the
interrupt me for that?
details. Because he doesn't understand what you're talking about. You don't.
He's not going to
He's
understand
still
if you
like
keep interrupting me.
No, I think I do. I think I
no.
do. He's
He's not.
saying.
He's.
Let me try.
I
Gregory, just
guarantee
a
you
quick
don't
yes or no.
understand. Go for
Just a quick
it. Go
yes or
for it.
no if I'm understanding you. You're saying like if I don't have a precondition for the uniformity of nature ontologically, then I can't have it. But I'm saying like I don't know the ontological status of that thing. So I just don't know epistemically what it is that are those preconditions you're asking about. So therefore, like what is the issue? Like I just don't know what that
You
is.
don't know. So in principle, in your worldview, given your premises, you wouldn't have the uniformity of nature because you don't know what it's contingent upon.
Oh no, I
In your
reject that
worldview, you
entirely.
don't have it. So you don't
Oh, no, no, no,
know
no,
that
no, 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 no,
nature
no.
is
That's just false.
uniform.
That
You're
is
just
just false.
presuming
False.
your interpretation
Utterly
is
false. Utterly
correct.
false.
All right, we
Stop
don't need you
talking to me.
interrupting. Gregory, you can finish your point. Then Grayson, you can go.
Okay?
All right, Gregory.
You're just not acknowledging the issue because it's a glaring issue. This is why David Hume argued what he'd argued. This is why the Enlightenment era in the 18th century collapsed into skepticism, because they couldn't justify their appeals to their empirical sensations, and they couldn't justify their interpretations of their empirical sensations. If you don't know what unifies nature, what normalizes nature, what regulates nature, then you can't rely upon anything. And in principle, if you don't have what sustains the reality of the things, including the uniformity of their nature, then you wouldn't have anything at all.
Okay, are you finally done? Okay, can I finally get a word in here? I'm trying to explain is that just because I don't know of the ontological status of the thing that you're talking about does not mean that I cannot observe the uniformity of nature when I look around me. It's in my worldview that nature is uniform because that's how I observe it to be. I just don't know what it is that necessarily or guarantees the preconditions of that. That can still be a thing in my worldview. I just don't know what it is. So just because I
You're still
don't know the
stubbornly
ontological
repeating.
status, just
You didn't
because I
You're still
understand.
don't,
Let me
stubbornly
explain
repeating
it.
your self-report.
no,
Okay, this isn't about
You're
the
just stubbornly
quality.
repeating your self-report. Of course, you
It's not about
believe
the
your
quality or
interpretations.
well, he thinks it's
Hey,
about the
let Indio.
quality of his.
Please let Indio go. Go ahead,
So he
Indio.
thinks it's about the quality of his knowledge and whether it's sufficient knowledge or not sufficient knowledge. This is about how do you know? How do you have knowledge at all?
Right?
I
You're just
just,
missing the point.
the way
Of
that I
course, you
have,
take for granted
Hold
your
on, Greg.
perceptions are correct.
Hold on. And
the
you
way
asked a
that I have
question.
knowledge is
I mean, that,
basically by
Wasn't a question.
comparing it with the world around me. Basically, like if I try to make the
that
claim that
assumes you have knowledge that
if
you
I
can
make the
even make
claim
a
that I'm holding a
comparison.
baseball right now and I look at my hand, I'm not holding a baseball. I've generated knowledge that I do not have a baseball in my hand.
That's just
You're still missing
listen,
the point. You're not getting it.
dude.
Well, that's how I generate knowledge in my worldview by checking it with the empirical reality.
We heard you say that already. You're not getting it. You don't get it.
You, I,
Well, like
I try to.
then you seem incapable of explaining it to me, Gregory. I'm
No, I
sorry.
do.
No,
You've explained
you're
yourself.
not getting
You've
it in
repeated
spite of
yourself
how many
numerous
times we're
times too.
explaining it.
No,
You're
I'll
not
try to
going
tell
deep
you.
enough, Grayson. You're not going deep enough, Grayson. This is more foundational than the fucking manifestations of your senses or what you experience in your empiricism. It's how do you
Okay.
know your empiricism is knowledge at all?
Okay. So then, by your definition of knowledge, then I don't have knowledge of
Believe
anything.
me,
Well, thank you for your concession. You're done.
I just disagree with like that being a useful conception of knowledge. I don't think that like in the real world when people are talking about knowledge, I don't think that that's what they're talking about. I think that I think that that's like a very metaphysical
Said
philosophical
the one who
definition of
doesn't know
knowledge
anything.
that doesn't actually exist.
Said the one who doesn't know anything. Okay?
Yeah,
No,
but
this is like
again,
the
From
basic.
that point
This is the
forward, after you
basic.
concede that, you're totally defeated about everything
I
whatsoever.
disagree
It's not
with
as though
that
you know
entirely.
anything given your worldview.
No, I disagree with that because I think that like the way that people what they actually mean by knowledge is not the philosophical definition of knowledge. Like when
It's
people
irrelevant. It's
colloquially
just
talk about knowledge.
irrelevant.
No,
It's
no, no,
irrelevant to
because
the point that we're conveying.
it's not. It's not because it might be irrelevant to your point, but my point is that when I say the word knowledge, I'm not talking about your definition, and neither are most people.
That's irrelevant. The point is, do you know what you're talking about? You have beliefs, and do you know them? Evidently not.
I know them by the vast majority of definitions that people would use that word in. By your definition, I do not.
It's just a redefinition fallacy. If you
It's
don't
not.
have a
You
logically
understand that
sound
knowledge has
argument
multiple
to
definitions.
justify the proposition that is being believed, if you don't have a logically sound argument to justify
Yeah.
believing the true proposition,
Yeah.
then you don't know it.
Here's what I'm saying. I think that the philosophical knowledge does not and has never existed, period. It's a thing philosophers made up. And that the real version of
Just
knowledge
waving
that
your
happens,
hand.
that is a process that happens in people's brains, is a real thing. And that's the normal colloquial meaning of the word knowledge, which
You're
everyone
waving
knows
your
what we're
hand and
talking
just
about.
determined to equivocate. Like I define the term, and you're just insisting on saying the word knowledge in
Oh,
some other sense. You're
no,
just
I'm not.
persisting to equivocate instead of talking about the same subject I'm talking about.
This
Okay,
is a
fine.
good exercise in forbearance for both of you guys. If you could use a little bit of impulse control, just try to let the other person get their full point across. Then go ahead.
Actually,
So,
Galatrix,
so you're simply just
I
not
think that
talking
was a
about the
good
subject that I'm talking to
interruption.
you
I
about.
appreciate it.
It's not an interruption. I'm just moderating.
Okay.
Right. So again, you're just not
Goddamn,
talking
man, you really don't
about
want me
the
to like you.
subject.
Goddamn. I was
Yeah,
trying to
I'm
compliment
trying to
you,
get
man.
back to the
Damn.
does not
subject.
like you, Grayson.
Like
I was trying to
every time I try
compliment
to get
you.
back to the subject, you just keep talking about something else. You're not talking about the subject. And when we tell you these criticisms, you just hand wave them and then
Okay,
insist on saying the word knowledge in some other sense
Gregory,
that you have
please.
not yet
Hey,
specified and have
Greg,
not
give him a break.
justified.
He's probably never heard this argumentation before.
I,
He's not aware of any
Sure,
like transcendental
I am.
or argument or
Indio.
anything like that.
sure.
I have
So
had the tag
regardless,
argument numerous times on my channel. I've heard all of this before.
No, this isn't
Okay,
like tag from
we
like it's
we
variations
haven't
of
even
the
got to
tag
tag
argument.
yet.
goddamn, man. Can
This
I just
isn't the
please
tip.
express this? Can I please just get this out? What I'm just trying to say is that I can try to just avoid using the word knowledge if it's triggering to you. I can try to use it in the same way that you're using it. In that case, I don't think it is a thing that exists. I've made that position clear. So then I will just try not to use the word no, because when I'm using it in a colloquial definition, which you can also find in the dictionary. It's a valid definition. Words have multiple meanings, but I will try to avoid using that word if you don't like it.
Wait.
It's not about not liking the word, dude.
Can I ask a
You're
question?
insisting on saying the
Don't you
word
guys have your
knowledge
own
in some
server to go
other
to?
sense.
I just stopped.
So
I said I stopped. Move past it, Gregory. Move past it.
Greg,
I'm
let
stopping.
me.
you're not interpreting what I'm saying to you. You're acting like so what I'm saying to you is ridiculous.
It
You are
is.
insisting. Just stop. I'm waiting for you to stop talking so I can reply so I don't be disruptive. You are just insisting on saying the word knowledge in some other sense, which isn't really knowledge. In the sense that I've already explicitly defined to you, you just conceded that you don't know anything, that you don't even believe it's real. You don't believe knowledge is real. So you
Yep.
couldn't possibly know anything, including that.
Fine. Look, I literally just agreed with you. You didn't need to say any of that because we already agreed I wouldn't use the word knowledge in the other definition of the word. I already agreed to that, man. We are trying to move on to level-headed discussion and progress the discussion forward. I'm saying I do not believe knowledge in your sense of the word exists. So I'm not going to use that word
All right,
anymore, okay?
can I ask you about that? Because that's
Sure.
a pretty wild statement. So you don't think
So
you
you
can
don't know
know
anything.
anything?
Not by that sense of the word. I don't know what word you guys want me to use for this, but I don't know what
You don't.
word you want me to use. Like,
Hold on,
I don't
just
think the
literally.
issue is
a
the word. I
couple.
think the issue is the concept.
Yeah, a couple of clarifying questions. So you don't think that someone can have knowledge or obtain knowledge or use knowledge in the sense of actually knowing something? Like, do you know 100% for a fact that we're talking in Discord right now?
No, of course not.
Okay, see, that's a crazy
Okay, this
worldview.
conversation.
That's
you-
pretty
you
wild.
don't-
Yeah.
Dude, look,
Look,
here's
I
something
think that
ironic,
if-
right? When he was talking earlier,
I think that
Click
when
it,
he was
upload it to
debating,
YouTube.
those
Look,
types of
Guys, hang on,
things,
let him-
God,
let
man.
Grayson
Holy
respond.
shit.
Yeah,
Let
he was
just-
just
Let
guys,
me
you should all
hang
just
on,
talk
explain.
at the
God
same time.
damn.
guys, hang
God
on.
damn.
Let Grayson respond to that.
I'm
Just ask the
trying to.
question.
Holy
Alright.
shit, guys. Like, hold on. Okay. I think that if we're all being epistemically honest here, everyone should agree to that because you have to
No.
first assume the reliability of your senses to know such a thing, which is an assumption you have to make, which means you cannot be 100% on that assumption.
Wow.
So already
You
from
just
the get-go,
extenuate your error to us, dude.
no, because I think that if you're being epistemically honest, then you have to agree with that. I don't understand. I don't
Can't just
understand how that could be
extenuate
different.
your error to us, dude.
Well, I just don't understand how it could be any different. If you could
Hold on.
explain how you don't have
Of
to
course
assume
you
that, I'm
don't. You
happy to
don't
hear it.
know.
Okay, so fundamentally, I have to disagree with that wholeheartedly. I'm sure most people in here will disagree wholeheartedly that there are things you
Yeah, I don't
can
know.
know. Like, I know I'm on Discord talking to you right now. Like, I know that. I
How?
believe in objective reality and that I can trust my senses because that's all I can go by.
Yeah, but that's not like you
Don't
can't
even
be
burden
100%.
yourself with trying
That's
to
not a good
argue
enough
the
reason.
contrary to him.
That's not a good enough reason to be 100% sure that you can rely on your senses. Like, do
So
you
Because you know
acknowledge?
that.
Wait,
How?
Your brain into
Hold on,
How do you
wait.
know that?
Let me ask a question real quick. Do you acknowledge that it's possible that right now you could be like a brain in a vat in a simulation and all this could be fake? Is that possible?
Sure, it's possible.
Then you cannot be
Non-sequitur.
sure, and you cannot
Say.
have knowledge that you're actually on Discord right now. That you cannot have knowledge
Non-sequitur.
if you agree that that's possible.
Non sequitur.
That's just a untenable worldview for me, brother. Sorry.
But he
Yeah,
just
I don't know.
acknowledged.
I don't know
But
how much
I
logic
don't.
or
I don't.
argumentation or philosophy, but if the conclusion of your philosophy comes to the point where you're denying what is obviously happening and occurring right in front of you, your philosophy is not useful or not legitimate. There's no reason for it.
So
Yeah,
I
there's
And
no
think that
reason to
dangerous.
have. There's no reason to have a
ultimately,
discussion if
I
that's your
I
worldview,
think
bro.
I think that ultimately every single philosophy, if they're being honest, is in the same boat on this. I figured this out in middle school when somebody tried to do the universe was created last Tuesday kind of thing on me. And that's when I realized that every single philosophy does not have an answer to solipsism other than to just assume that other minds exist outside of their own, and just to assume that there's an objective reality, and assume that you can rely on your senses. Like, these are assumptions that all worldviews have to
They're
make. We're
not
all on equal
assumptions.
footing.
Okay,
There's
so
They're
evidence
so
more
that
like
there's
again,
evidence. There's
presumptions.
not.
look,
Wait, that's
why
not an
are we
assumption.
burdening ourselves with trying
That's
to
not an
convince
assumption. There's
him?
evidence that you're
He's
given every day.
explicitly told us in so many words, knowledge is not even real. He'll just insist, for the sake of this discussion, to not use the word knowledge in the only actual definition of it there is
It's not the
concerning
only
how you
definition.
know a proposition is true, rather than equivocating in these other senses that are not knowledge, right?
Gregory,
He's
do me a
already
favor.
explicitly
Go look up the
conceded.
definition of knowledge.
We waited for you to finish. Let me finish. You don't know anything by your own admission. And then, after you say that, you then continue predicating as though you know things. You're in a performative and principial contradiction.
You got him.
Yeah, and since you have a
So,
brain in the jar, you could be talking to yourself right
so
now.
the answer to that is that anybody is free to go look up knowledge and see that there's multiple definitions. The philosophical definition is not even the most commonly used one by normal people. I mean, Gregory lied right there when he said there's only one acceptable definition of knowledge. That was a lie. When I'm using knowledge, right, and I try
Oh,
not
it's
to use
not
it
a
in this
lie.
conversation, I
Be
stop.
ashamed, and I resent you saying that. Don't
All
accuse
right,
me
well, you
again.
said something that you should have known is not true. So, what else do you call that? Anyways, I'm saying that, like, when I'm talking about things like the sun is going to rise tomorrow, you guys don't want me to say that I know that. I have to use a different word for that. I
Can't
can
know
just make
that.
up a word. But what is going on in my brain when that is happening is that my brain constructs models of the world around me and then facts check them with sense data. If they keep going along and they're reliable, then they
None of
become
that
more and more.
matters if you don't know you're on Discord right now, bro.
Let
None
me
of that
explain
matters.
this to
You
you.
say that, but like
Let me
nobody
explain this to you.
actually, like, if you've actually thought about this, like maybe this is the first time you guys are encountering this idea, you've never thought about this before, but
We've
like,
heard about
It's not the
solipsism
first.
before.
It's
Yeah,
not.
well, then how
So
do
wait,
you
can I chime in
counter?
really quick? So what you're talking about is positivism, and because you can't know for certain that everybody else might think differently than you may think that everybody thinks there's no sun coming out tomorrow. Like they don't know if there's a sun coming out tomorrow. But what you're referring to is positivism. That's what it's called. It's positivism. And what they're referring to is realism. And there's
Yep.
a stark difference between the two.
Let me quickly explain this to you as to why I said what I said so strictly. Either you have a logically sound argument to justify believing the truth of a proposition, or not. If not, then you either have a fallacious argument, or you don't have an argument at all. Because as it concerns argument, either the argument is logically sound or not. If not, then it's fallacious. Either you have an argument or not. If not, then you just don't have any argument at all. You just have a non-argument. So those are all the options available. Argument or not, fallacious argument or not, logically sound argument or not. So if you don't have a logically sound argument, then you don't know the proposition is true.
I think we're just going in circles because I already agreed that I don't believe that the knowledge that you defined exists. I don't think that's an actual thing. I don't think anybody has it.
We heard you. Right?
I know.
You
So
don't
why are you
believe.
repeating yourself about it?
Okay, right. We're just gonna make this clear. It's not as though you're refuting anything. You just explicitly told us knowledge, as in JTB, as in logically sound argument justifying the true proposition that's being believed to be true. That's not a real entity. You just denied the reality of knowledge. So you couldn't possibly know that or anything else.
All right, man, I get it. We just are using words in different ways. All right, like when I make that claim, I'm making that claim based on brain processes that are interacting with the world around me that have resulted in that conclusion. Okay,
And you don't know
I'm
that
not going
either.
to rely on any metaphysical fucking foundation for knowledge. Okay, like
And you don't
I'm
know
just
that
relying
either.
on brain chemistry and physics. So, anyways,
And you don't know that either.
yeah,
Given
okay,
your
okay,
premises.
okay, right. This is going back and forth because I keep saying that I don't think
Because you
that
have no.
anyone can know anything, and you keep saying, well, you don't know that, and I'm agreeing with
And
you
you
that by
don't
your
know
definition, I
that
don't.
either, given your
Exactly.
premises.
So can you just shut the
Thank you
fuck
for your
up and
concession
stop
to
going in
ignorance.
circles with this conversation? Because
No,
you are
Gregory's
making
just
Right.
points.
refuting you.
You are
Gregory's just
perpetuating the
repeatedly
circle.
refuting you.
Like
Yeah,
No.
you're literally
you're.
perpetuating the
Yeah.
circle. right?
You
You
literally
just
make your
explicitly
claim.
denied the reality of knowledge, so you don't know anything.
I think it's
But
good
you just
enough.
continue
You don't
talking
have
as though
to
you know
have
something.
100% knowledge. It can be good enough. That's my point.
You don't know that. You just deny the reality of
It's
knowledge.
good
There's
enough.
no
I
such
don't
thing as
need to.
knowledge
I
in
don't
your
need to know
worldview.
that.
Just
It's
just
good enough.
listen. Just listen. There's no such thing as knowledge in your worldview. Knowledge is not real in any sense in your worldview. So you don't know anything.
Sure. But I am pretty confident about a lot of different things. Like the sun will go up tomorrow. There's barely any doubt in my mind
I
about
don't
that.
know that either.
Yeah, okay, here's my point. The guy earlier illustrated this well. I'll talk to Beetlejuice because I don't go in circles with him and he can talk.
Beetlejuice.
Wait, this
Whatever
isn't
his fucking
this
name is,
isn't your
Beast
VC.
Testicles. I don't, whatever, man. He's a good one. Anyways, Beast
I
Testicles,
like
whatever your
Beetlejuice.
fucking name is, the Greek words, the letters.
Yeah.
So when you said earlier that you acknowledge that there's a possibility that this could all be a simulation, but that you also know that you're on Discord, to me, that's a contradiction. You cannot hold those two things at the same time in your mind. You either know that this is Discord or you acknowledge the possibility that this could all be a simulation.
Oh, I know this is Discord, bro. I'm on
False
it right now.
dichotomy.
So then it is
It's a false
impossible
dilemma.
that this could all be a simulation and that this is all just like your brain in a vat and this is all the Matrix.
Listen,
That's impossible.
holding that worldview is totally non-fruitful, right?
I
'Cause
agree.
That's that's a solipsistic,
Sure.
nihilistic
Yes.
worldview that
I agree.
doesn't get anybody closer to the truth about objective reality.
Well, now
That's
hold on.
really, but that's really
Because-
what the crux of the conversation is about, right? We
Wait,
all
wait,
share an objective reality.
Okay,
right?
look. Yes. I agree.
You're
Look,
not
let
listening.
me just fucking
We
explain
can
myself.
hear you
God
not
damn.
listening.
I agree that it's like a fruitful, like a solipsistic worldview or whatever. I just think that it's the most honest one. Like if you're actually being honest and you're not being led by your emotions or like if you're trying to get at the truth of what we
Self-righteous
can
virtue
actually
signaling,
know,
just
I
nauseating
think
now.
that again, Greg, goddamn. Anyways, I'm saying if you actually are trying to get at the truth of what we can know, I think that that's the conclusion you have to conclude with, and then you have to assume that objective reality exists, and you just have to acknowledge that that's an assumption that you make. That's just the most honest
So
thing
not
to do.
not only are you nauseating everyone in the room with your self-righteous virtue signaling, you are espousing a false dilemma. It is not you either know or you cannot know. That's not a true dichotomy. You either know or not. You either can know or not. And the possibility of something else being the case does not entail that he doesn't know. Just because it's possible to not know doesn't entail that he can't know.
Right.
It's non sequitur.
I know I'm in Discord talking 100% right now. I know that I can trust my senses to make, knowledge claims because I'm confident in my own senses. Some people may not be.
Wait, what?
There's a lot of
Whoa.
skeptos out there,
You
but
just said your justification was your own confidence in your senses, which is what I'm saying. It's good enough. It's good enough to be confident,
what he
but not
said.
good enough to know.
It's not what he said. You
No,
did not
he just
listen
said
well.
that.
okay, all right,
No, he
hold
did
on a
not.
second. Hold on.
Sounded like it.
I debated
Sounded
Grayson
like it
tonight.
was the same thing.
The guy who says he doesn't know anything knows that he is confident.
Right. He's continuing to
Thank you for your
contradict himself
contribution on
performatively
non-coding.
and
You
in
reminded me of
principle.
some of the things about him.
Like, it's not as though it's not happening. That is what's happening.
Like the
Every
non-coding
time
regions.
from this point forward, so long as you sustain the
Thank you
premise,
for reminding me of
knowledge
this.
is not real, as in JTB, you're going to continually commit the fallacy of contradiction, refuting yourself.
Yeah, I'm not contradicting myself, man. You know that words can have multiple definitions, right? That's all something that you learned a long time ago, hopefully.
Yeah, but you're
So you just ignored what I
using
just
the
said to you,
same
like you've
word
been
in the
doing all
same
night.
sentence with a different definition, bro. That's
Right? If
ridiculous.
you
I'm
gonna say it
not.
again. I'm gonna say it again. I'm gonna say it again. Let's see if you listen. If you continue to sustain the premise, knowledge is not real in the sense of JTB, justify a true belief, logically sound argument, justifying the true proposition that you believe to be true. Okay? If you continue saying that is not real, and you continue predicating after that, you're going to be in a principial and performative contradiction. Because if you really believe that, you would be silent and not predicate.
No, that's not true at all, really. I mean, I accept justified true belief as a definition for knowledge, and I think that I can have justified true belief, just not 100% in the way that you mean. So, like, I think that I can have a belief, like it's like, oh, it's 10:11 right now, and then I look at my clock and it's 10:11. Hey, that belief that I had was justified and turned out to be true based on my senses. But like, if you asked me, well, are you really 100% certain of that? Then I would have to acknowledge, well, no, I guess I could have just been hallucinating everything and I could be in the matrix. Like then it's like, okay, well then I acknowledge I'm not 100% certain of anything, but I can be so confident that functionally there's not a real difference. But to you specifically, with your like fucking philosophy rotted brain, that is not enough. It's not sufficient to just be like 99.9% confident about something. If it's not 100%, then I don't have knowledge. And then it's like, oh, I can't even rely on anything. It's like, it's a made up problem among philosophy bros. It's
You
not a
don't
real issue.
realize that you are still not understanding. It's not about the quality of your knowledge. It's about whether you can have knowledge at all. You're making knowledge claims about not having knowledge.
Look, okay,
Yeah, he's
so let me
contradicting
tell you the
You
issue,
himself.
right?
submitted another category
Here's
error,
the issue.
right?
Self-contradictory
No,
on his
here's the
face.
issue, right? Here's the
And he
issue
keeps
is that
spouting it, but he thinks it's smart.
here's the
Like if I
issue.
just say retarded shit over and over again, it doesn't make it right.
Here's the issue. If I say that I'm 99.99999% confident in something, and to me that is functionally equivalent to knowledge, to you guys you say no, no, no. If it's not 100%, then it's not knowledge, and that's the real issue.
Are you
That's what it
absolutely sure about
analytically
anything?
conveys when you say that you doubt, Grayson. You either are certain or not. If you're not, then you either don't believe it at all and or you doubt.
Yeah, man,
When
this is
someone
such
doubts,
bullshit.
that doesn't mean that they know it. That means they're doubting. So let me break it down
Man.
to you. Let me
No,
break
it's
it down to
bullshit,
you.
bro. If I'm
Just stop. Just
Hey, I have a
stop. Just
question. Hold on.
99.99999%.
Just
All right, all
stop
right.
Sorry.
waiting
Sorry
till
to
you don't
interrupt.
stop talking.
Let's let
Okay?
Why?
Bacon
So let me just
Why?
break it
I have
down
a
to you very
question. Hold on.
quickly.
Why
Oh,
is it not about the
Why
quality
does he
of
have to say that
knowledge?
when I'm in?
Why is that negligible?
go ahead and
It's
repeat
not
your
the issue
questions
we're
again.
talking about. That's just not the issue we're talking about. We're not talking about the quality of knowledge. That's not Gregor's point. It isn't like, oh, I didn't know this. I don't have perfect knowledge, so I don't know this. It's
Yeah.
not about whether I have it.
Why is that
It's
not
the
important?
possibility. It's the possibility of knowledge at all.
Yeah, what Grayson said is he doesn't believe anyone can know anything. That's what he
Yeah,
said.
he says knowledge is impossible.
Yeah, I'm saying that nobody can be 100% like certain about anything truly. Like they can feel
Knowledge is
100%, but they're
impossible as a
not.
claim.
Is that
Yeah,
an
It's a
absolute
claim that you
statement?
know something. If
I
you're saying
cannot
knowledge
be.
isn't,
Look.
if you're
Let me
claiming
clarify.
knowledge is impossible,
Allow me
that's a
to
claim
clarify.
from knowledge. That's
Please allow me to
self-contradictory on its
clarify. clarify.
face.
Please
See,
allow
Hang
me
on,
to
guys.
clarify.
someone
Let
didn't.
Grayson
My
finish his
God, we're just
point, and
losing
then
it. We're
Radio
losing it.
chaos. Radio, one at a
Just
time.
allow me to clarify. It'll take 2 seconds. I am
yeah, go ahead.
99.99999% sure about the last statement I made. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
so again, let me
if you're
break
dealing
this
with
down.
possibilities, wait, hold on, real quick. There's a certain percentage, right?
Bro.
Grayson, you're familiar with post-diction compared to prediction, right? A
Yeah.
lot of times we're arguing about that, right? So if you're talking about like the cyclical cycles of the sun or whatever it is, these things are a lot of times used as a way of saying that you're sure about something within cosmology or anything, and that's some of the things that that we like to point out. And as far as being a brain of that, that's understandable. It could be a simulation. That's understandable. That makes you have to say that have to have the caveat. Can we get beyond this instead of saying over and over again, you don't know anything, rather than you don't know, you're 99.99% sure? There's a difference, okay? This is circular. It's getting annoying.
Which is why I'm
Thank
trying
you.
to say this. So, you are committing a category error. It is not a gradient. It is a dichotomy. You either know or not. It's not a gradient. It's not a percentage gradient in any sense. So you're just misconstruing the very fundamental categorical error, nature of what knowledge
Yeah,
is.
that's my
You either
fault for saying
know or
100%.
not.
That's
So
my
let me
fault.
explain
Okay.
then, because my
I
point is
wasn't
that.
done. I wasn't done.
Oh man.
It's
Okay.
not a gradient. Okay, so stop talking about knowledge till it's a gradient. You either know or not. As it concerns knowledge, proposition is true or false. There's
Wait,
no
how is the guy
gradient.
with the
You either
solid state?
believe hang on, hang
Okay,
on.
wait,
You
okay,
either believe the
let's not
proposition or
belabor this.
not.
Okay, black and
Can I
white.
can I finish? I'm trying to speak
Go
when no one
ahead.
else is
Ever
speaking.
finish?
I don't understand. You asked to move on. We're moving on, Dave.
Great. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You either know the proposition or you don't. The proposition is true or not. You believe the proposition or not. You have a logically sound argument or not. There's no gradient. These are all dichotomies. Percentage is
Fundamentally,
not a gradient. Stop talking about it like it's a gradient. So you don't know.
fundamentally,
Well,
fundamentally, humans do not have access to the true ontology without a mediation through their senses. That is just a fact. The fact that you cannot ever be 100% sure of your senses means that you can never be 100% sure of the ontology of the world. You can only ever, it's always mediated by your epistemology. So we have to talk about epistemology because we don't have the access to the true ontology of things. We are
Wait,
always
you don't
mediated
need
by.
you don't
let's move on.
you can still think
That's
without a
incorrect.
sensory perception. Wait, hold up. You can still think. Wait, hold up, Gregory. Give me a sec. You can still have like perception with no senses. You can literally close your eyes, not see anything, plug your ears, not hear anything, float in a tank so you don't feel anything. People do this, and you can still have knowledge of things. So it is not bottlenecked at your senses alone.
Like
Well, the
what?
law,
Well,
the
okay,
law of
like, we're gonna go back to
non-contradiction.
this.
Well,
Go
let me
ahead,
just
Indio.
bring something up really quick.
Okay.
The law of non-contradiction does not rely on empirical senses, and it's true because you have to use the law of non-contradiction even to argue against it.
I don't know. What does quantum logic have the law of non-contradiction?
What is quantum
And
logic?
metaphysical
Oh
drivel
my
is
God.
not at
Let's
all
not go to
meaningful.
quantum
Qubits?
logic.
Well, I mean,
No,
quantum
it's
logic is
probably
a.
the law of identity. The problem with the quantum superposition shit is the law of identity more
So
than the. But that's more real problem. There is the lack of knowledge than it
so
is really.
this is
We
what
don't
I
have
was
knowledge
thinking.
about a position or momentum. It's
So
not
this
that
is
it doesn't have one.
my issue. My issue with this is like, yes, you can point to like, and I've done sensory deprivation chambers. They're awesome, but it's not going to get you close to like turning off all your sense information. Like to truly have like, I cannot imagine what a brain in a vat that had actually never been connected to the world. Like you cannot imagine what that would be like. So like, I do not know if such a brain would have like, I don't know if it's necessary to check with the empirical world about the law of non-contradiction or whatever. Like the law of non-contradiction like came about because brains evolved to function in the world that we're in. So like I don't know what a brain that has never even had any input from the outside world. I don't even know if their brain would even have like what kind of like thinking they would even have.
You've made another category error. You're conflating knowledge with certainty. Certainty is just maximum confidence. Knowledge includes certainty. They're not one and the same. So you have these fundamental categorical conflations in addition with your explicit denial of the reality of knowledge. You don't know what you're talking about, and you couldn't given your own premises.
No, so I would just clarify that this entire time I know the difference between certainty and knowledge. Like I understand that you can be certain about something and still be wrong about it. Like it's just your confidence about it. I have not conflated those two things. If you think that I have, like maybe I wasn't clear enough about what I said, but I am not conflating those two things.
This sound like
You
you just know what
did.
you're
That's why you
talking
kept
about.
talking
Yeah,
about
okay,
not
wait,
being
wait.
100% sure.
Yes,
Okay,
because
can I suggest that
wait,
we
wait, wait.
stop?
The
Can I
reason
suggest-
why,
Go ahead.
the reason why I'm doing that is because already, and I've just acknowledged this so many goddamn times. I don't know how many more times I have to do it. I have said I don't think that knowledge exists. So when I'm saying that I'm 99% sure of something,
Oh
I'm
my
only talking
God.
about certainty because that's all I have. I don't have knowledge because I don't think it exists. So that's why
Just
I'm talking about
contradicted
certainty.
yourself.
That's why I'm talking about certainty
You
because
What's the point?
contradicted
I think
yourself.
I think what Grayson, I think what people are getting at, maybe not to personalize it at Grayson might help. I think the language of the paradigm itself is what people get used to talking about because there are no absolute. Like there's a paradox, right? If I said there are no absolutes, I'd be making an absolute statement about that there is no absolutes, right? So it's a paradoxical statement. But the
yes.
thing is that yeah, to a certain degree, there you have to have that caveat. You can't be 100% certain about anything because there's always the possibility that this is an illusion or we're brain a vat or it's a simulation. Well, if it's a simulation, it's 100% a simulation of whatever it is that we're talking about,
Yeah,
right?
please.
And it's the
So
same
some of those
error.
things just
And
Before everyone else
I've never
going
gotten
on
a
and
chance
on
to
about
finish
that.
correcting the
It's gonna,
error.
really quick.
it's just gonna go
I'm
on
not
forever.
making wait, really quick. I am not trying to make knowledge claims here. If I say like you can't have this or this can't happen, like I know that you guys like you're hearing knowledge claims. I know I'm making certainty claims when I'm saying that because I already am not acknowledging that I don't believe knowledge exists. So when I'm saying statements like that, those are certainty statements, not knowledge statements. Thank you.
And then you
well, we can move
contradict
on.
yourself talking about being less than 100% sure, which is to convey you doubt. If you are less than 100% sure, then you're not certain. If you are certain, then
Yes.
you're 100% sure. You're literally
Yes.
still contradicting yourself, conflating the categories. You are
No,
not
wait,
good at
wait.
this.
No.
All of it is
When I
knowledge.
say I'm making certainty claims, I'm not trying to say I'm making claims of 100% certainty. Okay, I'm not implying 100% certainty. When I say I'm making
So when you
certainty
say you're
claims,
certain, you're not
He don't get
certain.
it.
oh yes, when I say I'm certain about something, what I'm talking about is like 99.99999 because
You
I
just said
don't believe.
yes.
Because I don't
Right? That's
believe.
not certainty.
Yeah, I
You're
know
just
you
Okay, we
don't
double
got it.
believe.
We
speaking.
got it. I don't think
You
I don't
don't.
think he's disagreeing with you. I don't think he's disagreeing with you. He's not trying to call it certainty. He's saying within a certain percentage of certainty. Can we
I'm
move
saying
on,
it says.
please?
Can
I'm
I ask
saying
want
it
to
is.
ask
It's a
a question.
percentage of
Look.
certainty.
I
You
really
have
want
to
to ask
stop
a question that's
conflating
going
these
to cut.
things.
God damn,
That's
man.
why we
I'm
keep
trying to say.
we're just
All I'm
equivocating
trying
the
to say.
words.
You
That's why
know
you have to
what? We're
stop
gonna
doing
lose. We're
this.
gonna. It's just because it's just uninteresting at this point. The point's been made. We know both sides
I
of
can
the
cut through.
argument.
I
He's
can
not
cut
trying to
through it with one
say.
question.
Not trying to
Okay,
defend
well,
him.
that doesn't
Anything,
give you the
but
right to
we
just
can move
disrupt
on
the
with
flow
other
of the
words.
dialogue. I can refute him if I want to. I mean, come on.
You can if
It's
you want
not
to. You want
certainty
to
to say that you're
anytime.
less than
Now it's
100%.
becoming preachy, and I think he's gonna leave.
Well, hold
We're
on.
Dude,
not
Can I
gonna
say
move on to
something?
you're
anything
just
more
disrupting
interesting.
the flow of the
Hey,
dialogue
Well,
with
can
your
I
no.
switch it
Am
up?
I
presumptions.
really?
Can I switch it? Can
I
I
want
switch
to
it
ask
up then,
Grayson a
real?
question. I'm going to
Yo,
cut through all this and get
Okay,
I
you're
wanna
right to
trying
ask
to
what I'm
speak when
doing.
no one else is.
yo, I wanna ask this
Hold
guy a
on.
question.
Indio,
I wanna ask the guy a
go
question.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm
Is
first, dude. Let me
All right.
ask him because we're going to cut
okay,
through this
Indio first?
shit, dude. So, really simple. Did he leave? Oh, no, he's still here. Okay. So, you keep saying that knowledge is on some probability spectrum. So, in that you're only 99.999% sure that there is no such thing as knowledge. So, does that mean that there's a 0.00001% chance you actually do know things?
Yeah. I'd say that there's a very small percent chance that God exists, therefore knowledge is real, therefore I do know things.
Why do
And
you
I
guys
must be
straw
wrong.
man me, man? That's weak, dude. That's
I'm
weak
just making a
sauce.
joke, but I'm acknowledging like yeah, there's a small percentage of like there's a percentage I'm wrong about everything. I'm acknowledging that.
That you
Grayson,
know,
have
but
you
that you know things. That you actually do know
That's a
something. There's a
concession to
probability that you
defeat. You're
actually do know.
done.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
Grayson, have you ever got 100% on a
Yeah,
math
it
test?
is a paradox, though. I don't know why he's taking that as a. It's a paradox because
You
even if
literally
you
just
say you
conceded
don't
ignorance about
know, it's a
everything
knowledge that you
whatsoever.
do know. Yeah.
All
I'm
It's
right.
not
saying
even
that
a
Hey, let's go
paradox.
back
It's
to
just a
Noah. Noah was
contradiction.
trying to get
It's
in.
just a
Noah, what did you want to
contradiction.
ask?
I'm saying that you
yo,
cannot be 100% on anything. That's my point.
We heard you, so
Hold on,
you don't
Greg.
know.
Not
Noah,
even on a math test, eh?
hold on. Noah
Yeah,
Noah's
you can get
next.
100% on a math test, dummy. Come on.
All right, go ahead, Noah. Ask your question.
Yeah, my question wasn't really about the debate. It was more about the person himself. Is this
Okay.
are you a Glober, Grayson Hawk? For me in the audience.
Yeah. You Google. You look at my YouTube channel, Grayson Hawk. I do flat Earth debates all the time. And y'all can
You
debate me
get
on the
destroyed
channel if
all
you
the
want.
time.
Wait, so
Hey,
you are a Glober? Yes or
Um.
no?
Yeah. I debate
yeah, he is.
against flat earthers.
Are you
Okay.
agnostic?
Understood.
Wait,
Are
So
you
wait,
hold on.
agnostic?
Wait,
you're
don't worry.
not so
Don't go
Grayson
like math.
Hawk. Can I ask another
Go ahead.
question?
Yeah.
Yep,
So
Shoot.
go ahead.
so you're not 100% certain that the
No.
Earth is a globe.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
What
That would be
would,
my
hey,
question.
Grayson, real quick. Grayson, if you could just real quick say, what flat earth argument is the best argument you've heard? And what's your best proof for the idea that we live on a spinning ball?
I'm someone who doesn't
Man,
have any
bro,
knowledge.
I don't really want to do a whole flat Earth thing, but I will answer you. But I just don't want it
Just,
to open
yeah,
up a
just
whole can of
real
worms. You
quick
feel me?
answer. That's
Okay.
fine.
let me think. I'd have to think about the best flat Earth argument. I really would. The best evidence, I would just say, like, we got like fucking pictures and shit. I know you guys say it's fake, but like, I don't know. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, people.
Wait, hold on. Wait, could they be fake? Could they be fake?
Sure, they could. I mean,
Okay, so then why would that be your best proof?
anything's possible. Sure, whatever. But
He just said he
there's
doesn't know.
also like
What I like to ask,
I mean, I could go on. I
clarify.
could talk about like the fact, like the sunsets. I know
Yeah,
that
okay.
it's a pretty basic one, and people make fun of. Oh, that's 2015 shit. Whenever you bring it up, but like,
Right.
I've had lots of discussions of this at a high level, and I still do not
It
think
is pretty.
Yeah.
It is
Let me
pretty low.
clarify real quick because I like to pinpoint this question actually a little better than I first worded it. You were just born on this earth. You were never taught anything about the idea of space and the interpretations of the sunset or the sky in general, right? You acknowledge at least that you would assume that it's stationary and level, right?
For sure, yeah. That like I think that's the
Yeah.
intuitive way that like humans like
Mhm.
for thousands of years understood the world.
Right. Now, if you're going to base your whole worldview or paradigm or, definition of your existence on the idea that you're living on a spinning ball, wouldn't you think that there'd be one thing about it that would be self-evident, at least?
No, not necessarily, because I think that there's like I don't think that such like there's no reason for me to think that such a thing would be self-evident necessarily, like so, because there's lots of things that are like not self-evident to humans that we had to like do a lot of difficult scientific experimentation to find out about.
Yeah,
So
but you
wait,
understand
there's not one thing that you think is self-evident?
Yeah.
There's not
You
one
would think
thing?
there'd
That's
be
not what I
one.
said.
You can
That's not what I
understand the
said.
argument.
Hold on, wait,
Well,
wait.
I'm sure you could. Hold on, wait. You can understand the argument, right? That we might have with. Wait a minute. We're basing our whole paradigm, everything about our existence, on something that we don't have one thing we can name as self-evident without the interpretations we've learned and all that sky, possibilities or whatever. That doesn't that kind of have a doesn't it
Wait,
ring
hold on
ring
now.
true to some degree? There should be
I
one
wasn't
thing,
trying to
right?
imply
One
that there was like
self-evident thing.
hold on. I wasn't trying to imply that there's like nothing self-evident. I'm just saying that it takes a certain like level of like instrumentation and measurement to do that. Like basically,
Interpretations.
like for I think maybe the first indication that something was maybe iffy might have been like the navigation around Africa and how the sun was setting on different sides, and people like the first navigators were like, wait, does this mean like there's some implications to that, but like I think that when you look close enough and you start analyzing the details, I think it becomes self-evident. But I'm just saying, like, to the average everyday person that's not doing a bunch of scientific experiments, not probing that deep, I don't think it's intuitive. That's what I was trying to say. And I do think that there are things that are self-evident to that guy that was saying that I don't think anything is self-evident. That's not what I was saying.
Death is
Well, yeah, but you admit there's not one thing that's just self-evident that you would, just all,
You're on a globe.
any human,
Yeah.
any human, you would think if it's a definition of our
So
very reality,
I'll clarify.
and all of the extreme claims, you'd think there'd be one thing that's self-evident about it. You'd imagine,
Well, okay.
right? You might
So I'll
guess.
clarify. Like there are lots of extreme claims that are not like that like intuitively evident. Like for example, it's self-evident that the sky is blue. Everybody agrees about that. Though it's universally accessible. But it's not universally accessible that water is composed of a hydrogen and two oxygen atoms. That takes like some further instrumentation to figure it out. It is accessible to anyone if they have that instrumentation, but it's not just intuitive. You know what I mean? There are truths
Right. But do you
about our
understand
world.
that could
Hey, Dave,
that
can
could
I
be
ask you a
categorized?
question? Can I,
You can, but real quick, I just want to say, you understand why that could be categorized as somewhat of a non sequitur, because it's one example of something that you can see but you can't touch. We're talking about everything that you sense, right? Everything, your whole reality, in all of your senses. There's not one thing that's self-evident about all the extreme claims that the globe has, which you would admit seems suspicious on the
well,
surface, right?
here, let me rephrase the question because I agree with you,
Go
Dave.
ahead.
So, Grayson, there is no self-evident things that were on a spinning water ball flying through space?
Like if you like design a experiment to test it, it is self-evident. I just don't think like the average person is doing that. Like I'm thinking
Wait.
with your five senses and nothing else, no tools or anything like that. I don't think it's self-evident. But if you have tools and you have technology to test it, then it is self-evident. That's my point.
That makes
All right. So then, if like, let's just say like everything that we observe in the sky, there's an equivalence for it could be a stationary Earth, whether you agree with that or not. Let's just say there's an equivalence for all the observations that convince you that we're on a spinning ball. Then wouldn't you think that if we're using deduction, you'd be like, okay, there's an equivalence for everything we see in the sky. It could be stationary and level, or it could be on a spinning ball. We're gonna like knock off the thing where there's no self-evident thing. I mean, like a stationary level is totally something that we all can resonate with because that's all we experience, admittedly.
To be
Right?
honest,
Don't you think that seems like there's your base axioms kind of
to be
make it an
honest,
unfair fight?
I don't really think that this is a very good line of argument for, and I'll explain it like this. Like, I think it's a pretty big deal that the cosmic microwave background exists, right? I mean, it shows us the very like infant like pictures of our universe, the earliest, the oldest light we have. But if you were explaining it to somebody, I'm like, well, is that
We're talking about
self-evident?
Earth right now.
Well,
I know.
wait.
I know. Wait,
Let's
hold
bring
on.
that up. Let's use
It's
that
an
example.
analogy. Hold on.
Right now.
Let me fucking finish
Let him
real
finish.
quick.
Let him finish.
Jesus Christ. Okay, so, and then you're like, oh, is that self-evident? Well, no. Can you see microwaves? No.
Sure.
But then it's like, oh, but
That's
if you do
explained.
have the proper equipment for it, then it does become self-evident. But you, by your five senses, it's
Right.
not
We understand that.
self-evident.
So
It's
wait.
interesting that you brought
Even
that up,
using
though.
that,
Because go ahead. The cosmic microwave background. Go ahead.
can I just? All right, cool.
Yep.
So you brought up the cosmic microwave background. Let's say we grant you those measurements, right? That observational data. Doesn't the CMB basically indicate that we're at the center of the universe?
You could interpret it that way if you wanted, but you could also interpret it that there's no center of the universe. That's equally valid.
Then you'd have to invoke things like dark matter and dark energy, making your position less simple, right?
No, it doesn't. Whether or not Earth is at the center or not at the center doesn't change the fact that you have to invoke dark matter and
He
dark
talked
energy.
about dark matter. You getting away from that point.
I just said that, and you talked over me when I literally
You're
said
good.
the word dark matter.
You're good. Just focus, bro. All right. So the CMB actually indicates that we are in the center of the universe. There's a preferred direction.
There's a really interesting study where they actually test the Copernican principle of like uniformity. I mean, I guess that would be not necessarily. It could be uniform, but not in the center. So never
not
mind.
only-
Well, I think.
Hold on, wait. Let me finish.
Mhm.
New perspective. Hold up, bro.
Yep.
So
Go ahead.
you would agree that geocentrism is not only a viable explanation, but it's a more tenable position to hold because it doesn't invoke things like dark energy and dark matter to explain the,
No.
the concentricity of the universe as it's expanded, right? Like the
No,
concentric circles of the
absolutely. No, no.
galaxy.
No, absolutely not. I don't even if we had a geocentric universe, which I think is just like a matter of philosophical preference, basically. Like if you're not changing anything about the physics of the universe and you're just declaring the Earth to be the center versus
Occam's
somewhere
razor,
else,
bro.
like it doesn't really matter to me. It's like a philosophical stance if it doesn't change anything about the physics. But that's the thing, is that it doesn't change anything about the physics. You still have dark energy and you still have dark matter. It doesn't change
Never
anything
been
about that.
substantiated. None of those two things have never been substantiated.
Well, there's 6 different independent cross-corroborating lines of evidence for the existence of dark matter that are independent of whether or not it's geocentric or heliocentric. So,
but don't you know what dark matter comes from? It comes from missing mass. Like,
yeah,
it's
that's only
non-existent.
one. That's only one of the 6 independent lines of evidence for the existence of dark matter, and it is not at all resolved by a geocentric model.
To the
Okay. Well, let's not.
That's a claim.
Before we get into dark matter, go ahead, Indio. Wait, Indio. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to. The whole assumption that the CMB, because it is an assumption, is cosmic microwave background radiation, is just that. It's an assumption. Because there are other emitters of that same frequency of microwave, namely the ocean.
Okay. That's interesting.
Okay,
So maybe
then
we throw that out for now.
if it's hold on, if it's only in the ocean, then how come that the Kobe space telescope depicted up in space? So
Okay, the oceans are big. Well, first of all, I don't think there's a space telescope.
oh well, there you go.
But even then,
Okay, well,
like I can give you a paper on it written by Pierre Robitaille. He's got a PhD in chemistry and a PhD in fucking also a medical doctor at the same time. He has the world record for the highest resolution MRI. You know something, a little bit of something about microwaves, magnetic resonance imaging, image formation, all that shit. So I'll give you a paper that he published that basically it's about Kobe and how it couldn't even possibly have measured what they measured because the doors, right, on the spacecraft did not function as they said they had to.
Okay,
so
can I just stick this in real quick before we get lost?
Hold on, I'm gonna post the paper in the chat.
He's a
That's
super
all I'm gonna
spectrum.
say.
Chill out, bro.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I was trying to let him go. Go ahead. Are you done, Indio?
Yeah, I
he's
just
gonna
wanted
put
to
the
post the
paper.
paper.
Before we get into a lot of what Grayson, what you're saying is that we have to believe that the telescope, or whatever it is, that the space telescope giving us this information. A lot of this stuff, like the pictures from space, you admit that it could be fake, so we can't really use that. Is there anything exclusive to the globe, right? That
Okay,
can't be.
wait. Just
There is no
because
equivalent. You have one thing that's exclusive to the globe that proves that you're on a spinning ball.
No, yeah, there's lots of different things. And just because I acknowledge the possibility that something could be fake, it's the same thing as me acknowledging the possibility that we're all in a matrix right now. Like I'm just acknowledging the possibility. It doesn't mean we just have to throw it out.
One is more
Well, yeah, but
probable than the other.
Yeah, exactly. That's a little bit of a false equivalence because we could be
Okay,
in a
well
simulation.
I know where
Not
I'm at
really
right
equivalent.
now.
You know that the Tesla car in space. I mean, I have friends that believe in the globe that are laughing at that themselves. So, and there's things that are very shoddy. I mean, if you think it's all totally believable, then that doesn't speak very well of you.
Well, look, okay. Like there's the guy that's the illustrator that repeated the clouds and all that. I understand all that
Yeah,
stuff. I'm not saying it's all
yeah.
like
That's true, though.
genuine photography. Like, you know what I mean? You never caught me making any claim like that, okay?
Well, Grayson, can we
Okay.
actually talk about that? Because I actually have a friend in here who's new to this subject. We're talking about Robert Simmons, right? Ah, thank you. Taking back Eden. Way to go. I'll read the quote directly. Then we wrapped the flat map around a ball. My part was integrating the surface, clouds, and oceans to match people's expectations of how Earth looks from space. That ball became the famous blue marble. He's literally admitting that composite is just that. They took a flat map, wrapped it around a ball, made the clouds and oceans look palpable to somebody who would expect to see the Earth like that from space. So it's just fake.
Yeah, and I'll also wait. On top of that, we have a friend that named Model Builder. I was telling his friend about last night. I used to work for a space agency, and he was supplying those pictures for guys like that were doing the blue marble construction. And he was realizing, even when he worked for the space agency, still believed in the ball, that they were coming from the plane altitudes. It wasn't coming from the satellite altitudes that were claimed. He also realized they were faking the ISS and they faked the moon landing. He still believed in the ball. He was holding on tight. Finally it was the mechanical gyroscope on the airplane that knocked him over the edge. And then he was full on flat earther and did a flight simulator showing that to scale, if we would see lots of curvature from even just a regular plane height if it was a ball, as well as he downloaded the ping data from every flight for 2 weeks and plotted it out on an AE projection and was showing that there's a 3 hour discrepancy in what they were reporting to what the ping data was showing in the South. Now that's all conjecture because that's just him, right? But he used to work for a space agency. You can hear him talk about it, very thick French accent. But regardless, if we were just to believe him and say, okay, well, it's either what he says or we're in a simulation, it'd be fair for you to say that's false equivalency because, he could be lying and, he could fake his ping data and all that. But just the same way, even though it's a grander scale, there definitely is more of a motivation for the powers that be if it is a flat earth and they're hiding more land and resources and all that. Definitely the motivation there. So there's nothing exclusive to the globe that you can name, I don't think, that would show anyone that we live on a spinning ball, is there?
Yeah, I think that there are lots of different things. Like
Name one.
okay. LIGO is an example that I like to bring up. Sunsets are an
God.
example. If you look at like the seismic observations of antipodal, like basically the antipodal seismic detections from earthquakes, that's another one. There's
Wait, hold on. Let's go back to
reciprocal.
sunset.
There's reciprocal zenith
Like,
angles.
Second question.
okay, well, we do have responses for all those, but let's just go to sunset.
I can really
Thanks,
blast through all of them in
I
like
don't want to.
5 seconds.
Go ahead, Indio.
No, I'm not. I'm not gonna. I wanted to go back to the original point about being self-evident. So if you have to use instrumentation and construct mental models about what reality is, it's not self-evident. Self-evident is obvious that you don't need to do any work. It's purely perceptual.
I guess I just have issues to that because, in my opinion, like all of our experiences are like basically we're experiencing the mental models constructed by our brains, and then our brains just use our sense data to like double check
That's not true, though.
that our
But
mental
that's not
models
true.
are accurate. So, in my opinion, basically that's how perception works. So that's why
But that's not how it works. We know from people in permanently vegetative states that are brain dead, where they don't have any reasoning, that they do perceive things with their senses still. That means the senses are disconnected from the rational mind.
Oh no, I
They're
agree
not,
with that.
they're not contingent on each other. So we can have perceptions and just as what they are, right? I perceive the earth as looking flat and motionless. It doesn't take any mental freaking effort to come
Yeah,
to that conclusion because
Indio,
it's just a sensation.
Indio, I'm not disagreeing with that because I acknowledge like blind sight. If you know what that is, it's like where you have no conscious experience of seeing anything. Like the person thinks they're blind, but their eyes work and their body can see and they can navigate around obstacles, but they don't consciously understand why they're doing it. So like
Yeah,
I
it's probably
agree.
the reverse of what I said, but
But you were saying that the senses can be separated from the consciousness, and I'm agreeing with that.
well, they are like they are just the perceptual part, right? You don't need to think about things to perceive them. It doesn't require you to like go, I'm seeing that, or I'm smelling that, or I'm feeling that, right? It's like we have those sensations; they're independent of our thoughts about them.
Yeah, I'm saying that like the construction of mental models is an unconscious thought process. It's not something that we consciously are doing with our thoughts. It's just like that's what our brains are doing in the background,
Yeah,
constructing the
yeah,
world we're
yeah.
experiencing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that's secondary. So we're talking like primary, just the primary thing, just obvious. What's obvious? We go out to the world. It's obvious that we don't feel like we're moving around. That's pretty obvious. Like it's obvious that it doesn't look like we're on a big ball. That's pretty obvious. Like that's what he's trying to say is that from the standpoint of what's obvious, the globe is not obvious. You have to look for it, right? You have to go out
Yeah,
and search for it and
yeah,
construct it from like using instruments that are
sure.
beyond your senses
Yes.
and use mathematics and
Yeah.
calculations and all these other things,
Yeah,
right?
that but
But
that's
those things are mental constructs, right?
well, okay, look, but that's the point I was making up till the mental constructs things. That's what I've been saying this whole time, and I
They're
just
not
think like
mental
isn't it
constructs.
isn't it
You don't
similar
even
to wait,
know.
India, let me ask you a question. Isn't it similar to atoms? Like atoms are not obvious. It's not obvious that things are made of molecules, but like you, those that is true. We can use instruments and technology to verify that.
But even atoms aren't like real. Like the models we have of atoms aren't real. They don't like the Bohr model of the atom isn't what atom looks
Oh,
like.
okay. Well, yeah, I can
Oh,
obviously
perceptual.
acknowledge that like the map is not the territory. Like I get it. Like the model of
Yeah.
our the model is not the same thing as like the ontology, but it's just like we're trying to get as accurate as we possibly can get.
Yeah, but you would think you'd start with something self-evident to base that whole paradigm on. If there's equivalencies all around, I mean, and you can claim LIGO, you can claim all these instrumentation. Indio can knock them all down one by one for either being fallacious or being interpreted the same for, what is self-evident at the same time. You would think, we're talking about quantitative versus qualitative when it comes down to it. You can have mountains of evidence for something, but if there's not one thing about it that's self-evident, the qualitative is going to outrule the quantitative every time for anyone being intellectually honest.
I mean, I don't know why you think that, really. Like, I
Well, I
mean,
mean, take LIGO for example. Let's take LIGO for an example. Now, you take it at face value, right? Literally face value that they detected gravitational waves. But how they did that, other than they use an interferometer, you probably don't know any details. Like
Actually, I think you picked the wrong person to talk to on that one.
So you know about the templates they used, the 800 templates they used?
Yeah, in their trial run, they used those templates.
No, they used it to make a detection at all.
Yeah, so like they had a certain idea of like, here's what the theory predicts we should look for, and then let's look to see if
they do that though. But why'd they do that?
Because that's how science works. You make a hypothesis and then you test it.
They did it because the noise was 11 orders of magnitude greater than the signal.
Yeah, but you understand like that there are ways to cancel out that noise. Like they have like people whose there's an entire department at LIGO whose entire job is for how to detect a signal in that noise, and they're good at
it. Yeah,
and
do you know how they do it? They pretend they have a priori knowledge of the source, and then they use templates.
I can prove to you beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that is not the case. Do you know how? Because we can prove that LIGO is detecting something real, and it's not just made up data, or it's not templates that they're just being fed and it's artificial, because they've corroborated with it. Because when there's a certain, I think it's a collision between neutron stars, or it's a source of a gamma ray burst, but the gravitational waves actually hit us a few, like either microseconds or maybe 2 seconds before the gamma ray burst comes. So LIGO detected, hey, we just got the gravity waves at this exact quadrant in the sky, and then all the telescopes around the world looked at that that area, and then a couple seconds later, then everyone saw the gamma ray burst.
That's little crap, dude. I saw their press conference on that when they did it. Listen, LIGO's a fraud. I'm going to tell you straight up, it's a fraud. Period. So at their press conference, I'm going to tell you, at their press conference where they announced, yes, we had a microwave burst detection that confirmed the fucking LIGO measurement, they had people that were scientists in the projects pretend to be reporters and ask questions.
So what? That means it's not real?
Means it's a fraud.
No, that doesn't mean that's a fraud. That's not a logical conclusion to make.
Imagine it's the White House gets like his staff to ask Trump questions and pretend they're reporters.
Indio, you want to know a fun fact? I've actually been.
Yeah, change the subject.
No, I'm not changing the subject at all. If you let me finish, I was going to say I have been inside the control room of LIGO while it is running and actively looking for gravitational waves, and I've seen what it's detecting. Like I've been in the control room for that.
Okay, so what?
So
what
I'm saying that I know that the device is capable of detecting like these things, and I know the guy.
You don't know that, dude.
I was not.
No, you
okay,
don't.
Look, I was not.
You don't know that from being in the control room. I couldn't pluck a random person out. Come on, man.
You're right. I'm only 99.999% sure. You're right.
But no.
I was not in the control room when they detected a gravitational wave event, granted, but I do know the guy that was. So he would have to be personally lying to me, which again, possible, but that's a lot of contingencies.
Well, lying is a strong word, right? So it's called confirmation bias. You see what you want to see. But I think there are people, I think there's people there that are fraudsters.
They run simulations.
Hey, can we move on beyond LIGO? Go ahead. Sorry. Can we move on beyond LIGO after what you're saying? Go ahead, Terry.
Do you all remember when I was like, "Oh, I don't want to open up a whole flat Earth can of worms"?
Yeah.
Well, you did name a few other things.
I'm going to turn the ball on this. So I'm going to post in the chat is a video done by a scientist that worked at CERN for 40 years that makes all the same gripes about LIGO that I just made. So it isn't just me. It isn't like Indio 007 on the fucking internet on Discord coming up with It's not just me. There's other people that think it's bullshit that are scientists and that work in the field. It's not just me.
Damn, man, I've been on here for almost 6 hours on this server with y'all.
Hey, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, I think I might I think I might be calling it here. I just kind of realized how long I've been on here. Like how
And,
goddamn, y'all be arguing a long time on this server.
it's 24 hours.
Whew.
This one, yeah.
There's a lot of bright
But
minds
hey,
there
I'll
too.
send you a DM with some of the videos from the guy I said that worked for a space agency. I mean, I know there is a lot of confirmation bias going on. You have to admit, and maybe on both sides, but I think that the self-evident thing. There's a point to be made there. Would you at least agree with that?
Dude, I really don't I don't think that it's a good like valid point, to be honest, because I think that there's lots of things that are true about the world that are pretty significant that are not self-evident in that way. So
Well,
like
yeah,
I would,
I understand that point, but I'm just saying, like, if you like, say you were just that person we were talking about that was thinking that you're on a stationary level Earth because that's the
yeah.
way it seems in every way before you learned all the theories. And if I were to ask you, would you guess that if it's opposite of what it seems, don't you think there'd be one thing about it would be self-evident? You might guess there'd be one thing. I mean, maybe there's not, and maybe it is a spinning ball for whatever reasons you think that. But
Well,
you would guess there'd be one thing, right?
I think that the most obvious self-evident thing is the sunset.
Yeah, well,
Well, yeah,
hold
yeah,
on.
yeah.
That doesn't make sense because before they thought the Earth was a globe, why didn't they reach the conclusion the Earth was a globe from seeing a sunset?
Because most people thought that the sun was like a literal god, like a thing in the sky that just like was doing its own deal, you know? And they didn't understand that like they didn't have knowledge of the observations on other continents about what the sun was doing. If they knew about what people on everywhere around the earth were seeing of the sun, then they would conclude that the earth is a globe.
So
Well,
are
you
you
think
saying
people
sunsets
are,
do not work on a flat Earth? Are you saying sunsets don't work on a flat Earth,
yeah,
and why is
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
he's not only that it's not only just he's saying sunsets don't work on the flat Earth, but it's so obvious that it's a globe because of sunsets
Yeah.
and that people never went anywhere.
So look,
For thousands of
I'm
years, yeah.
actually like happy if you guys like if you think that you like do know how a sun sets on a flat earth, like I would love to hear it because that's honestly like I ask people that and I like never get a good explanation. So like
Oh, I gotcha. Check your DMs. I'll send it to you right now.
all
But
right,
go
like
ahead,
I
Indio.
would actually be like more than happy to like learn about your thoughts on that because I'm like super curious genuinely about like how flat earthers kind of like think about the sunset.
Thank you. Lies cost more than money.
Okay, India, what were you going to say about sunsets? Continue, or anything else
What I
besides that?
was just talking about is that people saw sunsets and they didn't think the Earth was a ball. And if they had to make up stories to explain sunsets, it wasn't. That
Like
that would still mean it's not obviously a ball. That Apollo flying across the sky was still more plausible than it being a ball to them.
the reason why I think that more people didn't come to that conclusion is because they weren't traveling as much. Like the first people that were like observing a weird thing about the sunsets were the Phoenician sailors that were the first ones to navigate around, like circumnavigate Africa, and they were like noticing, wait, it's like weird how the sun is like setting on one side of the boat down there and on the other side of the boat on the way up, and like they thought it was weird, and literally the ancient Greeks wrote like this must be a mistake. This doesn't really make sense, and like they didn't get it, and then
The Hebrews.
You-
What about the
you
Hebrews?
yeah, what about the rest of the world? Like China, the
Hebrews.
Micronesia, like there's other people in the world other than Western civilization.
my point was that like the reason why the Phoenicians observed this is because they traveled all the way around Africa. It's like they had to travel a really long distance to be able to make the observations that hey wait, the dynamics of how the sun sets on really distant places on Earth doesn't really like it's hard to map what the sun is doing if the Earth is just flat, like if you try to figure out what the sun is doing during the day based on observations of places all around the earth, it just never adds up. It doesn't make sense for the sun to be one thing on a flat earth like that we could all be observing the way we're seeing it.
So the Chinese traveled all over the place. They were everywhere. They even claimed to have circumnavigated the world before Magellan.
They did not,
One of
but
their
the Chinese did not
they
extend.
claimed
They
they
did
went
not.
to fucking Italy.
The Chinese did not extensively travel until the the 1400s, 1300s.
According to them, they did. According to the West, they didn't. So I'm not Chinese. All I know is every culture claims that they're the best and they did it first. This is another
Okay.
instance of that because the
Well,
Chinese claim that they discovered all this shit. Yes, the Indians, they think they discovered everything. I'm sure if we got some Mayan people, they think that they discovered everything. Right? So there's a lot of little, what would you call it? Tribalism going on here.
yeah.
And
But
everybody thinks that they're the best.
the thing is that we can tell if it's true or not if we have genetic or archaeological evidence, which we don't for China having done these expeditions, but like we do for other people. We have historical records for others. Like we don't have that for China from this period. We don't have any historical, archaeological, or genetic evidence.
What do you mean? I don't understand what you mean.
Like, for example, there is evidence that the Polynesians came to South America before Columbus. That's like something that is evident by linguistics and genetics. Like, we can see in the genetics of those people that, yeah, there was contact. And then we can see, oh, hey, they all share the same word for sweet potato. It's like there's actual evidence of those expeditions.
Did you
There's
know
not
those
for
people
these
with
Chinese.
green eyes and red hair in the New Zealand, right? Maoris. There's a Maori tribe in Greenland. They're not like the rest of the Maoris, but they have red hair and green eyes. And they're according to their tradition, from what people can tell, they basically came from Ireland or somewhere like that.
Okay, I don't know about that, but I'm just saying.
There's a lot of these stories. Like you live in the West, right? We only hear what's promoted in the West. And I'm not saying this to be like, yeah, the fucking Western culture is bad. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm saying is we have bias, or we have like, there's a lot of limited knowledge about like what actually happened in the past. It's not exactly accurate. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Now, there's a book that it's like a book that was supposed to be written by the Mayans. And of course, it's like some Jesuit priest found it and like, look, the Mayans wrote an astronomy book. It has like orbits of the sun and the planets and shit in it, but they didn't believe in any of that. And then they found out later, right, when they found the Dresden Codex, what they actually believed, and that thing turned out to be a bunch of crap. But they tried to turn the freaking South American indigenous people, because they could predict all these things, the astronomical motions, that they tried to turn them into heliocentrists because that's what they believed. So they tried to take their freaking worldview and, shoehorn it into their own worldview. There's a lot of these little instances of this happen. So the Chinese, at the same time that Eratosthenes was alive, they did the same experiment. 2 sticks, right, in the shadows. But because they assumed the Earth was flat, they came up with the size of the Earth, that it's like 10,000 fucking miles wide and like whatever they came up with. But they have the records of this, right? They have the papers of them doing this test and experiment, right? Basically, they call it the Chinese Eratosthenes of flat Earth. This is the same time, 300 BC, as Eratosthenes was alive. So, like, it's not, the whole point is, it's not obvious. It's sun setting is not obvious. And that they don't even use a globe to even model the sun at all. It's all relative to the celestial sphere. It has nothing to do with the Earth. You could be on a fucking pretzel. You could still use the same model.
So
it's
I'm curious. This is slightly shifting gears, but like my brain is hella tired anyway. So
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah. If you want to leave, dude, don't feel free, dude. Don't let me hold you back.
I do have one question that I want to ask because I'm curious about y'all's take on this. Right, like you would acknowledge that there are. Maybe y'all think there's a one world government already. I don't really know what y'all think politically, but like in my mind, if the West is putting out this fake idea about the globe or whatever, it seems like the geopolitical rivals like Russia or China or Iran or North Korea or something, their governments and their scientists would also be able to look into the shape of the Earth, and if they were able to expose the West for this huge lie tricking the world, wouldn't that be to their like geopolitical advantage? They could gain a lot of soft influence to do that and like expose the West.
Well, there's a lot of assumptions packed into what you just said, namely that there's a shitload of people in the West lying. I look at it more like a Western tradition, like Christianity, that it was like a competing existential worldview of, the Enlightenment. This is like a Western narrative, right? There was the Enlightenment, and it fought religion, and the Enlightenment fucking and science won out, right? And part of that is the Globe and shit, even though the Globe originated with the Catholic Church. But I'm not going to get into that. Well, it was promulgated by the Catholic Church. But let me give you an example. The head of the Roscosmos, he said that the moon landing was fake 2 years ago, and I'm in the press, on TV, and all that, and I'm sure you've never heard about it. So he was the head of the
Oh,
Russian
shut
Space
up.
Agency and said the moon landing
Sorry,
was fake.
guys. I know I'm unmuted too. It's okay. I just broke something, but I'm gonna fix it. Continue.
Fix it. Fix it now. No, anyway.
Yeah, I gotta glue it together.
So like this is the thing. Like we're in an information bubble. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
And
I don't think
information war.
And that wasn't the only thing. So like a year after that, they had some like convention in Moscow where it was like a computer AI symposium, and someone presented to Putin some machine learning algorithm that would detect fake images. And he said, "Yeah, this detected that all the fake moon landing images are fake."
Yeah,
And he said this to Putin, to RT, on camera, all that shit. That shit never made it into the Western press, right?
I
Like, no
I
one's
did
going to listen.
actually
If
end up.
Russia says the point is if Russia or China or any say, "Oh, the moon landing's fake," you think everyone in America is going to go, "I'm listening to the Chinese"? Of course not. They're like, Chinese are a bunch of liars. They're just
Yeah.
jealous.
No. I would agree that like obviously there'd be like an information war if the Chinese did that, but like the Chinese are not doing that. Putin isn't doing that. I agree though. You're saying that those things didn't make it to the press. Maybe it's because I'm involved in the kind of flat earth debatosphere or whatever, but I did see both of those stories, I think. I know I saw the second one in my social media or whatever, but um what was the first one you were saying that the guy that came out saying the moon landing was fake? Was he a former cosmonaut or he was the head of the
He was the head of the Russian space agency, Roscosmos.
Okay, Russian
He was
space?
the top guy for something like 30 years or something. Dmitry something or other.
I heard about some Russian guy that came out about that, but I didn't hear that he was the head of Roscosmos or whatever. So I'll try to find his name or whatever.
Hey, one more thing. I know you want to go soon. Beyond the self-evident thing, I think, if the Earth is a spinning ball, I mean, I think there's reasons that we can know that's not true. Not to get into that, but if it is, isn't it amazing that this conversation is even being had to this extent? I mean, wouldn't you think there'd be overwhelming proof beyond anybody arguing against it at that point, regardless of the self-evident stuff? I mean, beyond,
No, bro. I don't.
undeniable proof.
I really
No.
don't because I mean you're talking to an atheist, right? So like more than half the world believes in something that I think is like a fairy tale. So no, I think lots of
Okay.
people can disagree about things that are very obviously not true. I mean that's just my approach, but like
Okay.
I mean look
That's
at this
fine.
country, look at this country. Like half the country thinks that like Trump won 2020 and half the country thinks he didn't. Like nobody can agree and that's
Yeah.
something we all
Okay.
live through. Like
Okay.
like
Well, one more thing.
objective
One
things
more
can
question for
happen.
you. Okay.
Uh,
One more question. Could you just
Okay,
quickly give
genuine.
us what's the difference between kinematics and dynamics in your opinion? Just real quick.
I
Oh,
mean,
jeez.
yeah, kinematics is just basically dealing with like the motions of things and the speeds and components of that, and dynamics is more so involved with like the forces at play.
Okay. So do you think that there's anything that doesn't live up to the dynamics? And it only has the kinematics explanations for the globe. You realize that there are some things that we can only kinematically describe without the dynamics really applying.
Could you give an example?
Orbits, maybe Kepler's orbits.
Really, at this time.
Um,
I would also say
like,
planes. right? But that's a whole other discussion.
Like, I mean, I think that like there's like, based on like the way that those things are moving, I think that there's some kind of forces at work, like like keeping things in orbit, forces of some kind.
Yeah, but he's asking if they model them that way.
Oh, well, then I mean, no, you can just say I mean, in sort of like Keplerian, like the equations and things, and like how like we model orbits. You mean?
Yeah, it's just kinematics. But I mean, regardless of that, there's some things that are blaring contradictions, and I'm not going to get into the airplane discussion with you because that would go on forever. But there's some things like in special relativity that we talk about in here, like the idea that the Earth has to be moving up, theoretically, rather than if there's two people jumping out of a plane, right? That theoretically, the special relativity says that the Earth is actually moving up towards the person rather than the person moving towards the Earth, right?
Well, I mean, the person is following their geodesic, so I mean, they are
Right, but objectively,
following
what's
a
happening?
path. They're moving. They're moving in space. It's just that space time itself is warped. So
Right,
in relativity,
yeah, relativity. But technically, when it comes down to it, we'll have guys like Zanuck in here saying that actually, if you break it down, what the heliocentric model of special relativity is saying is that the Earth is actually moving up towards the person jumping out of the plane.
Like, yeah, you can adopt that perspective because the person in that's falling out of the plane is like in like a inertial like frame. So yeah,
So
I
that's
mean
valid.
you can adopt the perspective as if they're the center. Like that's a valid way of like crunching all the numbers. Nothing about the physics of the equations changes.
Well, yeah, the problem with every reference frame being valid, like the idea that the Earth would be moving up towards the person, if we have someone on the other side of the globe, right, also jumping out of a plane, the Earth can't be moving up towards both people, right, unless it's
Yeah.
expanding.
Yeah, but you would have to
Right.
do a
So,
translation from one reference frame to the other. You can't have two reference frames at the same time like that.
But wouldn't the
right, but do you
people be
see
in
the
the
problem
same
there?
reference frame? Yeah, wouldn't the
The
people be in
whole
the same reference frame?
the whole point of relativity is that there is no objective reference.
Right, but do you understand the problem with that?
No, it's just like the description of like the actual physics doesn't like change in that situation. Like you just have changed you want from one coordinate system to the other.
Well, yeah, but that's the problem. Dynamically, or I guess you could say reality, there can only be one reality, right? You can't have just, well, I'm going to choose a reference frame and interpret it this way, even though it contradicts the other reference frame.
Like there's not a contradiction like the translating from one to the other is not like a contradiction. They are different like coordinate systems, but you can translate between the two with an operation.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
but
second.
you understand.
I don't think you
The Earth
understand,
can't be
student.
moving up in bipolar. If there's someone on the other side of the globe also jumping out of a plane, the Earth can't be moving up towards both people jumping out, right?
Both
Otherwise, the
people,
Earth is actually
yeah.
expanding.
So let me
Objective
tell
reality.
them, both people, the jumpers, they're in the same reference frame.
No, they're
It's the
not.
Earth that, yeah, they are. They're just far apart.
No, they're two different reference frames. They have two
Okay,
different coordinate systems. They're moving relative
Okay,
to
so
each other. They're moving
okay, well,
relative to each other. They're not
right.
motionless
But
to
so
each
the
other.
question is, can the Earth
no,
be moving
because
up towards both of them? Can the Earth be moving up towards both of them on the opposite side of the globe?
I don't think so. I think that it's like
No.
like it's not like it's not moving towards both of them because when you pick one to use as your reference frame, it's not the Earth is not moving towards the other one in that reference frame.
Okay, so
No,
so
I
you
still haven't
so
heard it from the
you
other
so it
school.
can't be moving up towards both of them, right? Because they're jumping at the same time. That means that the Earth moving up is not a valid reference frame.
No. I just explained how it's valid. Like you first pick a reference frame to do the analysis. If you do an analysis of this, you need to have a reference frame. So you are mandated to pick one of them. If you pick one of them, The Earth is not moving towards both of them. No matter what reference
Right.
frame you pick, there is no reference frame where the Earth is moving towards both of them. Thus, it's not a real
Right.
thing.
Right. So that's what we're trying to get at, because that's showing in reality, objectively, it can't be that the Earth is moving up, because it would have to expand if there's two people jumping out of the plane on opposite sides of the globe.
I agree.
No, like you're just explaining that you can't have two reference frames at the same time, which is true. You have to pick one, and there's no problems with the physics. And then if you switch to the other one, you have the same physics. The physics of the situation change in no way.
Well, but you understand the criticism. We're talking about objective reality based versus picking a reference frame to kinematically interpret.
No, but that's the issue, is that when you're talking about objective reality, you still have to pick a reference frame to talk about anything. And so, like, in order, you're still in the same problem. Like, you
Wait a
always have
minute,
to have
that
a
is the
reference.
problem, though. So you do
Like,
think you're saying there is no objective reality?
that's what relativity is saying, is that there is no
Right.
objective frame of reference.
Right.
There is no
But you
simultaneous
understand that?
now.
Right.
It's relative.
But do you understand the criticism of relativity then?
I can understand if you don't like the fact that everything is
It's not about
relative,
liking.
but I
It's
don't
not about
understand
liking.
how.
It's about contradictions that make
No, there
impossibilities
is.
acceptable.
You have not managed to point out a valid contradiction. All you've pointed out is that if you incorrectly apply two simultaneous frames of reference, which you cannot do, if you do that, then it leads to a contradiction. So if you just don't do the thing that you're not allowed to do, then there's no problem.
Yeah, but that's the difference between objective reality and relativity, right?
It's like you saying that if you do like 2 minus 4 and get 6, then there's a contradiction. It's like, no, you're just using the method wrong. Like you have to have one frame
Okay.
of reference, and if you want to introduce a second frame of reference, you need to translate to that with a frame of reference, or with an operation rather. You can't just simultaneously have
Okay.
two frames of references.
Well, and you understand like the lab frame, right? Like the primary observation compared to like the secondary observation, those kind of
Okay.
things. There's a whole thing about the train with the bomb. Have you heard that argument?
No.
Okay, I'll send you a video on that. But that you agree that the Earth can't be moving up towards both of those characters that are jumping out of the plane, right? You realize that's a contradiction, even
Yes.
though you could yeah. Okay, that's all I'm saying. There's a
No,
contradiction there. So that means
I recognize that that's a contradiction. It's just
okay,
not what happens in relativity. So
Grayson,
it
can I
doesn't.
interrupt
right.
for 1 minute?
And relativity is not reality because of those contradictions.
No.
In
That contradiction has nothing to do with with relativity, because the Earth does not move towards both of the parachuters or whatever in relativity. Relativity does not say that.
Grayson, can I say
relativity
one
says
thing?
all reference frames are valid.
Yeah.
Grayson, just quickly, Grayson, we've spent countless hours explaining reference frames to new perspective. He will never get it. The end.
Well, he thinks reference frames has something to do with the tangential velocity added to a plane. So we really can't account for Ruh's insanity
Okay,
on
wait. New
that matter
perspective.
for sure.
New perspective.
Hey,
Do you acknowledge that you can only ever have one frame of reference at a time?
If you're just talking about interpretation, but if you're talking about
No. It's a
objective
yes or no
reality,
question. It is a yes or no question. In relativity, do you acknowledge
in relativity,
that?
yeah, that's the
Okay.
problem with relativity.
Okay.
Right.
No. But if you can only ever have one frame of reference at the same time, then there is no situation within the framework of relativity where the Earth is simultaneously going towards both of the fallers. That's just not in
Absolutely.
relativity.
Right. Yeah, we're not disagreeing with that. Well, I think the problem is when people are claiming that relativity, which is basically the paradigm now, right? I mean, that's what saved the globe. You have to agree with that, right? I mean, do you think relativity is reality?
No. No, I do not.
Okay. Okay, good.
And
That's all I'm trying to get at.
the reason why is because sorry, I was taking a snack. I'm gonna log off
All
soon.
right.
You guys are a fucking tyrant.
No worries.
But
Before
the
you
reason
leave, can
why
I
Get
ask
it,
you a
though.
question I've been trying to ask forever? So
can I
Oh, go ahead, Taylor.
this, but I just want to mention something before.
Oh, wait, let him tell us why reality is not relativity.
I was just gonna say because there's no quantum element to it, and the disagreement between quantum mechanics and relativity seems to imply that there's going to be a deeper theory, so that like the same way that Newtonian mechanics and understanding of gravity was replaced, it seems like Einsteinian relativity will eventually also be replaced by a quantum theory of gravity. That's all.
Okay, go ahead, Taylor.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I enjoyed our conversation, even though I wasn't feeling very well today. It's okay. I feel like I pushed through and you really enjoyed it. Other than
Wow.
that, I was just gonna ask you, just like how you got into this whole topic and how you like kind of came to atheism as a conclusion.
Okay, yeah, cool. I've got to say, like, wow, I'm very impressed. If you were not feeling good today, like, I was feeling, like, good. And I was super fucking tired at the end of that 3 hours of that discussion with you. So, like, knowing that you're not at 100%, like, I'm impressed. Um, to answer your question, I guess I've always just been super interested in science and biochemistry, but all areas of science and physics and history and all kinds of things. I just like learning, I guess. I would say that like maybe my three primary interests have been like quantum gravity, it's come up a lot, you could probably tell. Also abiogenesis and the origin of life, and then like the nature of consciousness. Those are probably my three favorite topics of like unknown cutting edge type research in science. But I just like all branches of science, and I like researching that. And I just kind of consider myself to have always been an atheist. I mean, I was not raised in any religious household. My mom was kind of like spiritual, believes in a higher power, and my dad was just an atheist. But they never like told me what to believe. They
What's
just
the
sort of like,
definition of atheism? What's your definition of
okay, yeah,
being an atheist?
I'll answer that really quick. But I'll just say that like my parents basically had the philosophy of like, well, when he let him just like make up his own mind whenever he gets old enough, and they just sort of like let me make up my own mind, and they like took me to church when I got curious, and I could talk to a priest, or like they were encouraging me to explore the options, you know, and just figure out, make up my own mind about it. Anyways, um, my definition of atheism would just be basically anyone that answers the question of, do you believe in God, with no. Which, you know, I oftentimes get accused of lack theism or whatever, just like, oh, it's a lack of belief. And they say, oh, you know, to be a true atheist, you have to have a positive belief that there is no God. And like, I'm not a strong atheist in terms of that. I just don't have a positive belief in the existence of any gods.
What percentage?
Um, it's kind of hard for me to put a percentage on. I mean, I just feel like I don't have any good reason or evidence to believe in the existence of gods. Like, there's not really that much doubt in my mind. Like, oh, like what if God does exist? Like, it doesn't, you know. I mean, I'm pretty confident. I mean, if I was like putting money on it, like, what percentage of my net worth would I be comfortable putting on the non-existence of God? Like 100% of it. Like I would bet everything that I own that it doesn't exist. So I'm pretty confident.
What about wait, hang on, what about if you found out that Earth is actually stationary? Do you think that might change that percentage?
Like if I found out that Earth was the center of the universe and a flat stationary disk with like a firmament and everything like that.
Well, disk, I don't know about all that, but you just realize that, you know, it's stationary in level just like it seems 100% of the time. And that's what you
Well,
realize.
I don't know about
Maybe.
that, but I would say like if we really did find out that it was like the biblical cosmology with like, you know, the firmament and the whole Big Bang like that, or like not Big Bang, I meant shebang, sorry. Um, if we really did find like the biblical cosmology was true, I do think that that would then make me have some serious doubts and be like, ooh, wait, hold on. Maybe God is real. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know
I
how this
started
could
to,
naturally come about.
can I say something?
And
I
just
find that
realizing it's
ironic,
stationary
dude.
would be one step towards that. But go ahead, Indio.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah, I
I
was
find it
asking.
ironic that you're less certain of your own existence than you are that God don't exist. It's fucking crazy to me.
No, that's not true. If you were to ask
No,
me, wait, no.
you also don't exist. You said 99.999%. Then you said you would bet 100% that God don't exist.
No. Because I can't
Yeah,
divide
well,
my
that's
net
what
worth.
you did say.
Hold on, man. Hold on.
Is that
It's
what you
because,
said or
no,
not?
hold on, man. Hold on. Jesus Christ. Look, it's because I can't divide my net worth to that small fractions. If you were to ask me the exact same question about how much of my net worth would I put on the fact that I am alive and exist, I'd also put 100% of my net worth on that. Okay?
You know, back to the thing about that I was pointing out about there's nothing self-evident about what you believe. That's an interesting amount of confidence that you have when there's all these equivalences for interpretations on top of that. Just saying.
Exactly. Grayson, how much
Okay,
of all knowledge do you have right now? Of all knowledge? 1% or 90%?
Bro, like I have no idea. I don't think I could possibly even give an answer to that.
What if God is in that percentage that you have yet to explore?
It's possible, man. It's a full possibility. I acknowledge that.
Okay, let me just ask. So basically, you have a lack of evidence for God. I understand that, but like aside from like scientifically having to have a materialistic explanation of things, like I find it interesting that you study biochemistry and like didn't come to any sort of conclusion about just the amazingness of it. So I'm just
Wait.
wondering, like,
I did come
out
to a
of like
conclusion about the amazingness of it. I do think it's amazing.
right, and so I'm just wondering, like, how is it that like you can like can you look at the cell, right, and say like that, yeah, at least at the very least this looks like a top down design rather than a bottom up?
What do you mean
Like
by that?
okay, removing like okay, we can't say any like we can't have any supernatural implications or conclusions in science, but I'm just asking like as a friend, like an opinion, like don't you see top down design the cell versus bottom up just like
Like,
logically?
I genuinely don't think that thought has ever crossed my mind of like top down design in a cell. Like, I'm not, when I look at a cell and I think like it's incredible how it all fits together and things, and I marvel at it. And like, but it's like never crossed my mind like this looks like designed from the top like a blueprint or something like that. That thought never occurs to me. Like, maybe it's just because I'm not wasn't raised in the background to believe in a god and that there's like a designer and
I want
stuff,
you to
and
look at the
I don't
cell,
know.
if you do any more research or whatever you're doing, or if you ever look into biology again, just look at the cell and its feedback mechanism and all of
Yeah.
the things required. And I'm telling you, dude, like there's no way, like the bottom up does not work. Does not work, and that's what we're seeing. That you need all these things at play at the same time. You need them to coexist simultaneously. And like we didn't know that. We didn't know all that about the cell whenever we were first like coming up with these theories, like that they could just spontaneously generate, like but now that we have like electron micrographs and stuff, we can actually see the intricacies of the cell. And now that we have biochemistry, we know like all these complex processes and feedback
So,
loops that
well,
are
like, how does
required.
it make you feel whenever? Sorry, I feel bad now. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I totally did just now, Taylor. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was
um,
just thinking, just looking at it basically, it suggests like the top down design. And that's the simplest and most concise and short way to put it.
I understand that to you that's intuitive. To me, that just doesn't. I don't think that is intuitive, or that is something that is like it just I don't see the rationale in thinking that. But I wanted to ask you about how you feel about when James Tour, who's like probably like the biggest anti-abiogenesis guy out there, like in terms of his platform, like when he says statements like, "Oh, like maybe we'll have a working theory of abiogenesis in 200 years or something." Like he acknowledges that, oh, like even if it takes 500 years, oh, well, if we have it one day, then moves the goalpost to basically say, well, that'll just glorify God even more and stuff. And it's like, I mean, I just don't know. Like, what do you think when he acknowledges that he seems to acknowledge that one day, if we continue to exist as a civilization, like he seems to acknowledge that one day we probably will have a naturalistic mechanism for abiogenesis. Like even the biggest anti-abiogenesis guy admits that.
Y'all made him that way, by the way. You atheists did.
I don't
Really?
really
Yeah,
watch
you
James
guys
Tour
did.
that much.
He wrote. He
Hold
wrote.
on.
He wrote an
Wait.
article.
Taylor was answering real quick.
Oh, sorry, Taylor.
No, it's cool. I was just gonna say I don't actually watch James Tour that much. You know, interestingly, like let me tell you how I got interested in. My phone's no, I got 15%. Okay, I got interested in this because like I've always wondered how life formed, and I asked my fifth grade teacher how did life form, and because I was like, just common sense, like there's no way that this just happened by accident. And then she's like, "Oh, molecules wanted to make more molecules," and I was like, because she even looked
Oh
very
man.
skeptical about that answer. It was a really weird, peculiar answer. And I could tell that she never thought of it. And she had a doctorate degree, and she taught middle school biology. However, yeah, so that is how I kind of got started. And then in college, like I was constantly questioning these processes. And whenever they taught us about abiogenesis, I was like, this is crazy. What I was looking into the theories. I was just very interested in origin of life.
Mhm.
Like that might have been one of the main reasons I actually got into biology is the origin of life. But you know,
That's
biology as a
awesome.
whole is very interesting. But I just always knew it. And in college, I was writing these papers about like problems with abiogenesis just out of pure curiosity and like just being intrigued with the topic. Like nobody, I didn't even know anybody else at all was interested. I thought I was the only one. I was like, there's no way. I'm the only one that's like over here studying biology that's like questioning these processes. So I didn't even know like people like James Tour were no inspiration to me whatsoever
Mm.
because I thought I was the only one writing
Yeah.
about it.
That's
So
actually like that's genuinely fucking awesome, Taylor. I gotta say, I think that's super cool. When I have a biochemistry major, and and the only time abiogenesis ever came up was like at the end of one chapter in like biochem or something, and they just basically only mentioned RNA world as like it might be this, but super sketchy, nobody knows. But like yeah, that does suck that you had a fucking fifth grade teacher that was basically lied to you and told you something with certainty, just like thinking that it was gonna be some like innocent lie. She just tells a kid to try to get him to shut up, and stop asking annoying questions. But like, I hate when teachers do that. I can empathize. I also, coincidentally, you had your first brush in with this abiogenesis thing in fifth grade. I had my first brush in with like atheism, I guess, or being called an atheist in fifth grade, where because I'm just saying that we could both have negative experiences that are like not at all reflective of like I don't think my experience is reflective of um like Christians or anything, but like I was literally having a fucking argument in fifth grade about this kid because this does anyone remember that documentary that came out that was pretending like dragons were real and they found a real dragon or whatever? It was like a mockumentary in the 2000s or something. Um, but this kid was like, "Oh, dragons are real." And I was like, "No, they're not, dude." And he's like, "Oh, well, the Bible, they're in the Bible, okay? So they are real." And I said, "The Bible's not real either." And then he pushed me up against the wall and said like accused me of being an atheist. And I was like, "I don't know what that is." And he tells me, "It means you believe in science instead of God." And I went, "Oh, well then yeah, I am that." And then he tried to punch me. So like that was
wow.
my first introduction.
Sorry,
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that
sorry that
science
happened.
is interesting in that it actually like in many cases proves God. That's how I feel. I
Yeah.
feel like real science proves God.
Well, like, yeah, I don't think that there's like a, oh, you have to believe in science or you have to believe in God. Like, I don't think that that is like, there's tons of Christians that are good scientists and like do good science and that are, yeah, I don't think that those two things are true. So I'm just saying, like, I'm sorry you had a shitty fucking teacher in fifth grade that told you some shit that they shouldn't have said, but, um, shit, I don't think that abiogenesis should be taught that way. Like they should teach that we don't know the answer to the mechanism for how this like that should be very clear whenever anyone is taught about it.
Well, we're closer than we've ever been.
That's true as well.
No, it's not. You haven't gotten any closer. If anything, you've added more complexity to the question at hand. I just wanted to
Like
offer clarification real quick about something you said about James Tour. His faith is entirely separate from his practice as a scientist. So when
I
you're
agree.
making that statement that he's acknowledging that we could get there, we could get there. Actually, his determination as a scientist is that we're not getting there because the math is only you're just imagine every second you're adding more zeros to the probability. This is like the complexity that this is the problem at hand. So his determination is that it's not getting any closer because every time they, one step forward, it's 20 zeros back. It's getting more complex. It's kind of like pi, you know, for a circle. The numbers just go on forever. You're never actually getting there. You just think you are.
Well,
Okay.
I could say that he
So,
explicitly said that we will eventually get there. That he thinks.
well, and
so-
that's the context I was trying to clarify on, is that he would be a dishonest scientist if he wasn't open to possibilities. But his determination as a specialist is that it's an improbability, and he's trying to give caution to the world at large, and not because of his faith. Because even if they found out if they
He's not a
could create
specialist in
life,
this area.
even if they found out they could create life, his faith is separate, and that's why he said that. It would just glorify God even more. It's his position that he would have to glorify it either way. But his conclusion as a scientist, it's an improbability, and this is why he's giving caution.
He thinks that our current models are not anywhere close and are totally clueless. But he does acknowledge
And they
that
are.
he says one day we will probably have an explanation, a naturalistic explanation for it. He just thinks that it's very, very far away. But he does think it's like, gonna happen.
Well, and you know what? I think maybe there's more he's not saying, and it could be because he thinks maybe some processes are, caused by a God force or something like that. But I think I made the point pretty clear.
Okay.
So can I make the point about what made him where he is now? He wrote an article, I think back in 2008. It was called And Versions of a Synthetic Chemist. He wrote it on his blog. And a bunch of fucking atheists went ham on him, tried to get him canceled, did a bunch of fuckery. So I kind of pissed him off. And he doubled down. And it was never motivated. It was actually motivated by the faith and lack of faith of atheists. It wasn't his faith that drove him. It was freaking the lack of faith of, atheists that don't like the idea of someone with faith being involved in the scientific field, especially someone of his stature. He was voted by the American Chemical Society as one of the three greatest chemists of the last 100 years. He isn't a scrub.
Well, okay.
So have you seen his what is it, the H rating or whatever?
Yeah, he has a huge H rating. There's also controversy about that because several of his graduate students have come out and said that he's
one guy. Yeah, one guy.
Well, yeah, but anyways, I do
dude, that's weak, bro. That's fucking weak.
I just acknowledge the fact that he is a very good, talented, and prominent, successful.
One of the best in the world. Okay, let's say that. One of the best in the world. One of the best in the world in the last 50.
I'm not willing to say one of the best in the world, but I do say he's a very good synthetic chemist. The issue is that none of his publications are about origin of life research. It's not his field.
Yeah, but he talks about the chemistry. Is that his field?
Yeah, but he doesn't know about biochemistry. That's the issue. He knows about synthetic chemistry. So he's talking about something that's not in his field. That's the issue.
His field, right, is synthetic chemistry. And you're starting with it's regular. It's not biochemistry in the beginning, right?
But
in the beginning, before the biology part, right?
He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand protein chemistry.
I mean, why don't you debate him about it?
Because he refuses to debate me because he says my channel is not big enough.
I fucking seriously doubt that.
That's what he fucking told me. He said that he says that when he started debating Professor Dave gained a ton of subscribers. And he said that my channel was too small and he didn't want to blow my channel up and make me more popular by paying attention to me and giving me a platform. That's what he told me.
Like verbally?
In
an email? Telekinesis?
Okay, look.
Or did you just make that up?
Let me tell you the truth. I don't think you're going to believe me, but I'll tell you the truth. He told me on email, but it was my old fucking email that I'm a dumbass, and I lost the password for, and I had to change my email. It used to be critical based inquiry, and now it's critical based inquiries. Oh wait, shit. No, maybe flip that. I don't know. One of them right now is a different one that I have. And it's caused a ton of fucking issues with my YouTube shit because in the first year and a half of my channel, I lost all those emails and everybody emails me and it's like, oh, he's such a fucking dick. He never responds to his emails. But though that old email account is where I have those fucking emails with James Tour. I really wish that was not the case. And it sounds like I'm fucking bullshitting you, but I'm telling you, man, like that is the truth. I know you probably don't believe it, but that is fucking true.
Okay, well, you
Honestly,
said
I
You
think
well,
explain
hold
that.
on.
It sounds
I want to
believable
say
to
one
me.
more thing. Can I say one more thing? Well, now you said that you're the focus of his last video. Now's the time, right? He's gonna like call you out, man.
Yeah,
Tell him to
yeah.
put his money
That's
where his
right.
mouth is.
right.
Yeah,
Oh,
if
you
he's
mean like
calling you out,
insult emails?
you should be able to.
That's true.
If he
He could
calls you out
totally.
directly, then he shouldn't be turning you down any longer.
Okay, so when he told me that, I think I only had 300 or 400 subscribers. Now I have almost 5,000, so maybe am I big enough for
Yeah, of
him to at
course.
least I'm big enough for him to make a video about now. So maybe he will debate me now. I don't
Yeah,
know. I actually
I would imagine.
I just emailed him this morning basically saying thank you for finally making a video about amyloids and making a substantive video. I'm really looking forward to like responding to it, going in breakdown, and I was nice. So hopefully, I want to debate him. I do. So I'm hoping that maybe he will eventually say agree to that.
I don't think you want to debate him. I don't know. It's gonna be
Can you
rough.
can you think you're competent to debate him on the level of the chemistry?
Dude,
Yeah,
please tell me.
he has made some very basic mistakes about like introductory level
So what?
biochem stuff.
Everybody's made basic mistakes. So what? That doesn't
I
mean that
mean,
he's
like
gonna win in a debate.
if he says he says to me, you're making the mistake versus him making the mistake.
No,
And
that's
we've
true. Like
all made
I've
mistakes. This
also
is
made mistakes. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I actually
No, what I'm saying is you're saying he
he
made a
correctly
mistake, and he's
called me
like,
out.
no, you're wrong. It's this. So how are we
Mhm.
going to resolve that dispute?
So yeah, well, he correctly called me out on some things. I misspoke. I said ATP instead of adenine. Like, fair enough. He said mistakes about how like amyloids quickly degrade, and he's made basic mistakes about how amyloids fold and things about just basics of amyloid chemistry. It's like there's mistakes that have been made on both cases. I think we could have a good discussion. I really do. I think I would be a much better interlocutor than fucking Professor Dave.
Well, dude, a fucking ham sandwich would have been better than Professor Dave, dude.
Oh wait.
Professor Dave
Yeah, it
don't
was
know
muted. But I
anything.
was trying to say something to Grayson like about the mistakes thing. Like, we've all made mistakes, and I was like contemplating whether or not I should bring up this old encounter that we had about a certain paper that, we talked about on Modern Day Debate before. Did you ever follow up and check into that paper?
Which one?
The paper that we were deliberating on whether they inserted or used an RNA polymerase or if they used a template. I never went back and watched it because I didn't really care to bring it up. But
Wait. I'm trying to figure out which paper you're talking about.
yeah,
Like,
so this was a while back, but basically it was we're deliberating whether or not they made something self-replicating just from pure monomers like nucleotides or amino acids. I think it was about the RNA thing, but it could have been about the amyloids.
oh, I think we were talking about amyloids, and so yeah, I would have been wrong in that there were two different experiments. One made amyloids, and a different experiment showed that amyloids can be self-templating and self-replicating, but they didn't use the amyloids that were like formed from monomers. Those were like two different
Right.
experiments. So like
So
in principle, amyloids can form and can self-catalyze, but the no one experiment showed both.
So I would just want to say that like at first I was like, like should I bring up this problem, right? That he's got wrong in the past, but I was like, no, like I don't want that done to me. Like we've all probably said something wrong. So I don't want to hold that against people, So that's why I
Well, thanks.
didn't bother.
I appreciate that. Like, I am also though I am happy to like publicly, for the record, correct any errors. Like, I like it if people can show me like when and where I made a mistake, so that I can like correct future behavior and like be less wrong in the future. Like, I'm totally happy to acknowledge if I've been wrong or or fucked up. So you don't have to feel bad or whatever. But I do appreciate the consideration.
Yeah, and so I think that like with things like James Tour, like because he says stuff wrong, I don't think that should make us to like discredit him, right? Because we've probably all said stuff that was wrong at
No,
one
yeah,
point.
no, I agree. Like, I wasn't trying to like discredit him because he's like made mistakes in the past. I'm trying to like, basically, like, my central point was that like Origin of Life is not his field in the first place. Like, he doesn't have any published papers on Origin of Life. Like, he's a really great synthetic chemist, and I would 100% like trust the things that he's saying about synthetic chemistry because that's his expertise, but not Origin of Life.
Well, honestly, not many original life researchers are out there debating.
Well, no, they're like none of them are. Like, whenever I had Dr. Greenwald and Dr. Riak on my channel, like the two Origin of Life researchers, and I asked them about James Tour. The first guy had never heard of him, and the second guy was like, I think I've heard that name before, but like none of them were aware of his YouTube channel. Like, I had to show them and be like, this guy is like, I had to show them who James Tour was, and like those are the actual Origin of Life scientists that are practicing.
I think that they're much more humble version of life, like the actual researchers. I
Are
think
much
that
more
they're
what?
much more aware of the limitations,
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Like, I mean, I agree that like science journalism is fucking terrible in general about sensationalizing things, like in every area, like in Origin of Life, in physics, like they're always saying things that are out of pocket. Like on the headlines for like the big science journals, and or not like the peer reviewed ones, but like the ones for the public.
Do you
And
think
that's what
saying
I have a problem with is them, acting like they know everything, and like it really discourages research in the future too, to act like, oh yeah, we got all this figured out. There was like a study that was done asking people like if they think that we made life in a lab, and many people said yeah, like they genuinely thought that we just had made a cell like from scratch or something. So it's like that's what takes me off.
Well, yeah, I don't like that either. I'm always advocating for like better science communication. Like, you won't find me trying to defend that one.
Hey, quick question, just out of curiosity. I talked about this with Taylor before. I don't know if it got brought up. I didn't see the whole debate. But have you ever heard of, and what's your opinion of, if you have, microzyma and Antoine Bouchamp?
What was the first one?
Microzyma. Ever heard of microzyma or somatids? Or, originating with Antoine Bouchamp back with Louis
No,
Pasteur back in the day?
I have
Ever
not.
heard of him? Okay, I'll
No.
send you some information on it. It's too much to get into, but it kind of doesn't. It gives some answers that might be like a happy medium between origins of life having to be, from an outside source. Basically, the information's within the cell itself, causing it to be pleomorphic. It could change into whatever it needs to be. And there's a lot to it, but I'll send you some information. It's
I
interesting.
mean, it sounds like morphological plasticity, which is like a real thing.
Right, and those are the interpretations that have either come from this and then not wanting to say it's this, because the story is that they extracted Antoine Bouchamp from all the encyclopedias, because it was the debate between virus or virology or germ theory versus terrain theory back in the day.
Okay, it's getting too late. My eyes are glazing over.
Yeah,
But
I know. I'll send
yo,
you some
this
info.
this this server is crazy, man. We talked about like abiogenesis, then we talked about like all kinds of. Well, we talked about a ton of different subjects just now. We were talking about physics for a while. I mean, that was crazy.
Welcome to Flat Earth.
Do you know
Yeah.
anybody? Do you know anybody else like pro abiogenesis that'd be willing to debate? Yeah. It's like advanced and like knows the topic.
Maybe that guy Dressel Drace or something. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
I sometimes see him on YouTube comments, and I think he has his own channel, and he like sent me like he saw that I did like debates on abiogenesis, and he was like, here's my bibliography or whatever, and he just like sent me like 500 papers or something. To be honest, I didn't really look through them all because I already have like my own backlog of papers that I want to get around to reading, so I didn't really add any of them, but like he seemed like he was really into it. So let me see if I can find him. It was like his name was like Drace or something like that. I feel, which sounds like a made up ass name. So
So is there? So do you think that'd be the only? There's nobody really else out there pro abiogenesis that are
well, I
debating.
just don't know. Like most people that do like these debates usually debate evolution, not abiogenesis. I mean, like most of the time, people don't really debate on abiogenesis. I feel like I'm like one of the only ones out there in terms of like the YouTube debatosphere that I know that kind of will specialize in this area.
How
I'm
about you
trying.
reach out to that dude and you tell him that I'm gonna challenge him to a debate? That I'm
Yeah,
challenging him.
yeah, I think that he would definitely want to talk.
Oh, cool. That'd be fun.
I think so anyway. Anyways, yeah, I'm gonna go, but y'all can DM me or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah,
Have a
I
good one.
sent you a bunch of stuff. Sorry, so many. Take
All
care,
right,
man.
y'all. Peace
Thanks.
out.
You too.
Yeah, I think it went well.
Good job, Taylor. Really good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I really wasn't feeling well today, so I hope I did okay. Yeah, I was
You did great.
woke up feeling terrible.
You were really nice and patient, and yeah, definitely. I thought it was a good exchange as far as I could see. I didn't see the whole thing, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought it would be more challenging. I thought it like, but he kind of conceded the evidence for abiogenesis like at the beginning. So then, what am I supposed to do from there?
right, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he kind
he's
of
being
conceded
pretty
that he
fair.
wasn't bringing much evidence. So then, it was actually pretty easy.
Right, like he just admitted or conceded that relativity isn't our reality, which a lot of Globers won't do.
Yeah. So I want like some challenging debate.
Well, there's not much evidence for what they're saying. He's right. So what are they going to do? You know?
It's true. So then I mean, yeah, but they should, if they think it's a fact, then they should be willing to debate it, right?
Right. Well, yeah. Same evolution in general. I mean, you know, if you
I
get into
don't
that, they're
have it,
not going to
guys.
even claim one species turns into another, even though they're trying to claim it at the same time.
He tried to
Crazy.
slip in some evolution evidence in there, and I called him on that. I was like, "Bro, you're trying to like use this opportunity to bring evolution evidence." And I was
Nice.
like,
I'll have to go back and listen. I didn't hear that part.
"Yeah."
What do you say about evolution?
He was saying that the non-coding DNA has these repeating sequences throughout multiple organisms, and I'm like, "Well, I was like, well, first of all, that's not mutually exclusive to, like, you know, a designer could have done that too, right?" But I know that like he was just trying to slip in. I called him out on trying to like slip in some evolution evidence in there.
Very
Yeah,
sharp.
I tuned in when he was saying something about like the irreducible complexity and relating it to black holes, and I'm like, no way! I have to go get Indio, and I went and got Indio, which actually was pretty good. Ended up being a cool conversation. Those two as
Yeah,
well.
100%. Yeah, it was fun. I do want a more challenging debate next time.
Well, there's nothing on their side. I mean, it's like we want a more challenging debate by the Glovers, but it's just reification after ruification, right, Ruif?
Eh?
Ruification fallacy. It's a new term in our lexicon now.
Okay. You interrupted my game.
Oh, sorry.
He had to disrupt his game to come over and unmute his mic just so he could respond to the ruifications. That's funny.
Well, if you have extreme deception, I mean refraction on your side, I mean, what can you argue against with that? You know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the theodolite, the celestial theodolite stuff, man. It's so over.
Is
I
it
don't know if
though?
you watched the
Because,
recent stuff. Did you watch the recent stuff from Mike on that?
There was
You
a
must not
stream
have.
a week ago.
No.
Just a couple days ago, maybe. I got the PDF. I can
Yeah.
put it in the chat if you'd like.
That would be lovely. Yes, because
There
there's
you
a
go.
stream tomorrow, right? On in here. Tomorrow here, right? Isn't it, Gio? Yeah,
Are they
no.
doing a reprise of that? Yeah, there was one last night from Mike, and then I guess maybe they're gonna redo it in here. Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah, stick it in the chat. Stick the PDF in the chat. That'd be good. I'll be there tomorrow. In fact, tomorrow, before the stream, I'm going to try and get the Chinese space station transiting the sun. That'll be fun.
LOL.
Thank you.
There you go, Roop.
Thank you. Boom. Downloaded. Nice.
What a night at Earth Awakenings.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta have more debates in here.
All right. That looks like it looks like it's been updated a lot since I last saw the PDF. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll stick the link in from last night's thing if you want to brush up before tomorrow.
Yes, please.